honestly, what the hell do you guys want from me? No, I'm kidding. Welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name's Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter. We're starting an hour late, but we cannot go any later than usual. But, you know, since we normally do it for 3 hours a night for free, I figured that's all right. I just had to do some extra work tonight, so I couldn't start till later. We do have Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies with us, though, still. Dynasty Outhouse is still avoiding us, I think, because his hatred of me has just gotten a little bit too far. We're here to answer any and all questions, comments, or thoughts you have about Dynasty Fantasy Football at all, really. So drop whatever ones you have in the comment box, whatever streaming platform you're watching, listening, or angrily shaking a fist at of your choice. And yeah, welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. Hey, Zach, how's it going?
Not too bad. How are you, Pete?
Not bad. I pulled in my driveway 30 seconds ago, ran past my family, and I'm sitting here. So, you know, it's a weird experience for me tonight. There you go.
That's impressive. I
fed the dogs on the way past, literally just threw the food up in the air, catch, and ran.
I definitely haven't been sitting here writing the next parody open for the Dynasty Dummies while I waited for the link for this show. That definitely didn't happen. And I don't have Spoon Underdog as an earworm in my head right now. It's definitely not happening.
I haven't been editing and re-editing the Dynasty Crossroads script that was meant to come out yesterday for 7 straight days either. So
I'll be excited when that finally lands and hits, because you have a lot of information.
I think I caught a hook walking around today. You know the way it works in the back of your head. I was like, I think that's the through line, if you know what I mean. But I still don't have a start.
The beginning's always the last part, anyway.
My history teacher used to say that about essays, and people that I knew who tried to help me, you know, not suck at writing, said a similar thing. I guess that's why I suck. I have to start from beginning, go to end, and then I'll go back, and the middle will become the end, and the end will become the middle, and then I'll scrap it all and start again. But I have to start. I have to go linear. It's just the only way. Anyway, Jeff Smith, who was here at a regular starting time. Appreciate you, Jeff. 12-team Superflex, start 10 PPR. Kamara or Marvin Jones and Jaden Reed. Kamara or Marvin Jones and Jaden Reed.
Marvin Mims. That's a big distinction.
I'm deep into the weeds right now. Yeah, Marvin Mims and Jaden Reed or Kamara, and a league of that format. Which I don't care.
I'm honestly at a point where I'm taking the 2 rookies. With Kamara, like, yes, Kamara may have another year or 2 where he's decent, and Kamara may have a Kamara year. Kamara may avoid suspension with his whole entanglement in Vegas. But that's a lot of ifs. And I think right now, Marvin Mims is right on the cusp of a first-round pick. And if you can get a first-round pick for Alvin Kamara, I'm probably out with the knowledge, Jim, that you may be losing the points in this trade for the next year or 2.
Yeah, same space. Like, here's the thing with running backs like Kamara and Aaron Jones too. Like, I'll trade for them when I know I need them, but I don't know that unless I'm in season. I see how the points are rolling. I see how they're playing, and that's the thing about running back. But on the other side, while you're right about the pick value, like, essentially you got 2 second-round picks here. But if it was 2 second-round picks, I'd be like, yeah, sure, the picks in Dynasty. And that side still wins here. Don't get me wrong, site like Mims. And I think Reed's okay, especially where you get him in drafts. But, like, if I'm trading a Kamara, I'm just looking for capital, I guess. And I'll wait until in season until I get a late first from a winning team if he's scoring points. But this is a trade on the table, and the answer is Mims and Reed in Dynasty. And like Zach said, you're probably losing. Like, Kamara's probably the only player in this deal like I really have high expectations of him being useful for. Like, the others are dice rolls, you know, which is why I'd probably rather the picks. It's more interesting to more people more of the time.
You get the
for most trades. And here, someone's already made the pick for you. But yeah, it's fine. And Mims is someone I'll draft very happily in especially a Superflex second round. and Jaden Reed's fine at the end of the second round as well. So the value's there, and the upside is on the Mims and Reed side. We know what Kamara can do and what he should do when he's healthy, and like Zach says. But like, if that's what I need, I'll wait till I see it, and I don't think his price changes that much by the time we get into the season. So depending on which side you're on, Jen, and what your team looks like, that'll decide this trade for me. Like, if it's not a high contender, if I'm completely rebuilding or just building more than I'm competing in any sense, yeah, just the Mims and Reed side. But at the same time, if you have Kamara, I think you could probably pick your trade if he's scoring points at some point at this value. Don't get me wrong, you won't end up with something much more special, but you could wait until in season and you see a few good games from Mims and your team's not competing. Like, do you still want Kamara for Mims or whichever other rookie? For me, it's a timing thing. But yeah, Zach's right. The straight up trade, it's a Mims side, but it's just a big bag of we're bored in June.
But you're not concerned that, I mean, again, just to play devil's advocate,
yeah,
if Kamara comes out and they levy a suspension, or if Kamara comes out and doesn't play well and Jamal Williams vultures touchdowns, and all of a sudden they've drafted a rookie also who can play a little bit. So,
you're right. There's downside on Kamara and there's upside for Mims. And like I said, that's the side that wins. I'm not saying no to this trade. I'm just like, Mims has to be someone you've got on your target list. And I don't mind. And I don't mind that. It's a big bag of receiver dice rolls. And if my team's in that situation, this is the kind of trade I might roll for because of that risk on Kamara. But not knowing that's why the team would kind of decide it for me, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Like, just in a vacuum, I'm like, I get, okay, sure. But I spent too many words saying just what Zach said. There you go. Randy Wyatt. So what was your strategy in a points per first down league? I haven't looked into points per first down in a while, but I keep meaning to because it's in a few of the scoring formats I'm in right now. But 12-team Superflex PPR, half point tight end premium, and a point per first down. Even when a quarterback passes for a first down, he gets a point. Also, the quarterbacks get extra points as well. Sorry, Zach. Sounds like you got something to add straight up.
Well, Randy, my initial strategy would be to go look at a site that has first downs as a statistic, because you're going to gain an advantage by figuring out who are the guys who have been consistently first down producers. I think it probably gives you your possession receivers a little bit more of a boost. It probably gives some of those tight ends a little bit more of the boost. It definitely gives passing quarterbacks a little bit of a boost. So that's
the quarterbacks are definitely getting. I've never seen it where the quarterbacks get an extra boost because of first downs.
Yeah,
and that's your first step. That's why I hate new scoring systems. I have to go figure out the new rules when you spend so long trying to figure out the standard or the PPR rules, or where it is. I looked into it a couple years ago when they included it in Scott Fishbowl scoring, and this is one of the reasons I like MFL, especially for a non-coder like myself. If an MFL league is set up that way, it does spit out the points that would have or were scored in that format for the last 3 years, and you just copy them, put them in a spreadsheet, and you can kind of see what you can gather, even on that 3-year sample, relatively easily. From what I remember, it boosts running backs more than it boosts wide receivers. It's going to obviously boost wide receivers playing in the slot even a little bit more than wide receivers playing on the outside, because you're going to get that volume of first downs rather than the spectacular first downs of a longer throw. Tight ends, Zach's right, but certain tight ends are going to be boosted more than others. Like we've spoken about before, Kittle's more of a yards after catch, whereas a guy who's a consistent chain mover of that offense is also going to benefit from those extra first downs. But off the top of my head, just looking at your scoring format here, without going and making that spreadsheet, in a Superflex league, you're getting an extra boost on quarterbacks. And so in a Dynasty Superflex, where typically quarterbacks can be still even a little undervalued, just a little bit, you might want to just invest in quarterback a little heavier than you would already have. But outside of that, the scoring format isn't going to change the Dynasty trends of how much volume players are getting over their career arc. And so while running backs might score a little bit better and a little bit closer to wide receivers, like I was just talking about with the last question, the problem with running back really isn't that they don't play as long. Their value arc is less, and there's an extra risk of injury. Slight extra risk of injury. And so you can kind of still wave it away depending on how you want to build. If you want to build purely for points, running backs are going to take a little bit more, depending on how the draft goes, a little bit more emphasis because they are going to get an extra boost with that first down. But you're still playing in a dynasty where you've got the same trends of career arcs and value trends that you kind of expect in other leagues as well. But yeah, so the real benefit here seems to be it's going to boost running back in scoring a little bit. It's going to boost tight end and quarterback in scoring a little bit. But those are the two positions there the value matters a little bit. Or there's interesting values to take away at those two positions. And so, drafting a tight end a little bit earlier than you would, or a quarterback 3 a little bit earlier than you would, not QBX or whatnot, but something closer to it is probably the first way I'd think about approaching that scoring format.
Yeah, and the running backs like Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, the guys who are getting the bulk of the carries between the tackles for their teams are going to be. If you looked at last year, like I know Josh Jacobs had a ridiculous year last year, but Josh Jacobs had 30 more first downs than like the next running back.
It's a good point. Like Kenneth Walker as a breakaway runner more than anything else, at least last year, probably doesn't benefit as much someone as even ETN, especially if he's going to get a bigger receiving role, not to mention the split that Walker now finds himself in. And maybe ETN does too. I prefer Tank, but I think the split is much more clearly on the table for Walker than it is ETN. But anyway. Yeah, it's interesting. I advise, especially if it was on MFL, just go and taking a look at those, at least that 3-year history to get a sense of who is good and not good compared to what you're used to being. Because you can find some interesting trends. Like someone like Hunter Renfrow still might be a little bit more relevant, and therefore you can go a little deeper at wide receiver before you have to panic.
The half point premium plus the first downs too makes Kelsey just a man among boys.
Mm-hmm.
But
the potential value swing of Pitts too. Those are the two positions that it seems to affect in my mind on the dynasty trend wise. Obviously, running backs are going to get the boost in scoring, but they're always kind of a points proposition for me, unless they're a little undervalued. And this year, running backs can be, so I'd keep an eye out for it. But my strategy is purely based on trying to establish an idea of how things generally work, the historical approach, if you will, and then see how the draft goes. They might push you into running backs because Josh Jacobs falls like he did last year, and Ramondre Stevenson, though risky, is just his ADP is just too tempting. He falls to you at the right spot, and so your team immediately gets thrown into this high points per game build, and that's fine. You have to be able to adjust to what the draft gives you. I don't go in like with a set strategy ever. Mainly because I can't keep in my mind. I'm way too cat with a laser pointer. I got to chase it.
Jefferson way over Chase in a points per first down.
Oh yeah. That's the thing. The guy who gets more yards on single. Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, but Randy, that's where we're
it might help separate out players in those close tiers. That's a good point.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Flosaurus, how you doing? Randy again, Jimmy G or Tannehill? Would you get as many starting QBs as possible to make your opponents weaker? Especially in a dynasty, I don't mind playing that if the draft gives it to you. But you got to remember that quarterbacks are replaceable as any position. Both John Bosch and John Hogue have a point on this. Quarterbacks are less replaceable, but they are replaced. We're at a time right now where I really think we know who most of the great quarterbacks are going to be over the next period. Not that we won't see another good one every year or every other year or so emerge, but there's really no question that we're going to be talking about Josh Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes for a minute. So that area of quarterbacks is a little more secure. But you've always got that middling class of Eli Manning to Phillip Rivers, who are just solid. This class is a little bit below that. They are the bridge quarterbacks, which the NFL has got more and more familiar with using. And so both could be into a job and out of a job over the next few years. So they're just 1-year starters, and that's the way I'd think of them. But yes, if they fall to a good place, you can draft them and plan to trade them in the John Bosch sense of when a team needs that quarterback in a year.
Go listen to the latest episode of the Superflex Super Show, Randy, because Peter and John Hogue went on both sides of this and give a better explanation than we can in 4 or 5 minutes.
I would say that, but you'd have to listen to John. And just maybe just
no, that was such a fun show. You guys did a great job.
No, I enjoy talking to John. He's awesome. Zach Harris, looking forward to tonight's show. You guys are my favorites.
Appreciate you, Zach.
Zach. Thanks very much. I'm glad I'm someone's favorite. I'm not anyone in my family's favorite. Literally, I just threw food at them on the way past. Like, they don't like me. Yeah, thanks very much, John. It's nice. I like it. It's my division. I normally just get the generic Scott Fishbowl shirt, like the Scott Fishbowl shirt of the year, but there isn't one this year because it's all theme related. And so, yeah, I just had to go with the division I ended up in. I was planning, not wanted, because I'm happy to be anywhere, but thought I was going to go in the Waffle House division, but by the time I looked, it wasn't on the list, which I assume means it's filled up. And I was like, well, where would I most like to eat right now? Because I don't have strong food allegiances. I just like I eat, and I like most things. And I was like, I'd really like to go to Cracker Barrel right now, and that's how I ended up in this show. Fascinating story. I know.
But I'm in the Loretta's Last Call division because I am going to go eat there before the draft.
Oh, well, so, that makes sense.
Yeah. We do brunch at the Boston Live Draft at Loretta's Last Call. So.
Nice. Just saw Herbert as a QB1. Yeah, I've been playing around with that, wondering if anyone would notice. I think there's an interesting argument because I tried to explain this in the Dynasty. DLF asked us to do like a rankings explained series where each ranker would rank their top 100, I think it was, and then talk through why the tiers are the way they are. And one of the elements that kept coming up to me is like, I don't value Herbert over Mahomes or Allen. Don't get me wrong. Like they should be drafted first. But as long as they're drafted first, Herbert's like, he's in a tier of players right now who's a little bit easier to get than Mahomes and Allen. He's a little bit younger. And I think while the exact upside of Mahomes and Allen on a year-to-year basis hasn't been hit, he has that significant advantage on a year-to-year basis. So while Mahomes and Allen are above him, you've got extra years in a dynasty. I've got no questions about whether it's real or not. And the trade market right now is just a little softer on him right now. So if I could trade Josh Allen and Mahomes into Herbert plus, like a significant plus, I'd be all about that. And so I was just playing around with it, and I put him as my QB1 just to see how it sat with me, to be honest with you. And so far, I don't hate it as long as whoever's using it isn't just literally using it as a draft list. Like, I take Herbert. No, I take Herbert because you could trade back in a draft from the Mahomes or Allen spot and get Herbert. I'm very, very, very happy. And if I can trade either of them in an active league for Herbert and a significant plus, I'm also very happy. So yeah, that's why I put him up there. Like, it makes sense to me as part of trying to include a value perspective in ranks rather than just I would draft them in this order. But yeah, thanks for noticing because no one else looks. Yeah, and that's my specific reason. Yeah, that's all. And tomorrow I might just think that's stupid. Someone's going to look at it and draft Herbert over Mahomes and be like, "Hey, what's this?" But I don't see anyone who doesn't know Mahomes and Allen are going to be Mahomes and Allen for the next few years. Like, maybe my rankings weren't the place to start for your draft. Like, I'm pretty deep. If you're looking at my rankings, you probably know a bit already. It's like you don't find the Dynasty grind unless you know what MFL and Sleeper and Flea Flicker are. Like, you've been here a minute. You're good. John M. Hey, guys. 12 teams who flex tight end premium. I traded for Mahomes for Dotson, ETN, and a 24 first. That wasn't my own. Good trade, or did I pay too much?
You hit that in a 12-team super flex. Mahomes, that is an absolute win, Josh.
Yeah, that's.
In fact,
there's no way of overstating how that's a win. You're
probably underpaid by a first. Yeah, no, like that.
You underpaid by like a Dak, a Dak Prescott kind of a. they needed another pretty decent starting quarterback, and then you'd be like, okay, I get it. But yeah, it's a definite win, Josh. Good job. Daniel Wolf, I got a team that's
should win it all.
I'm terrible at that. Sorry. I don't know why people can't type cleanly. Why the spelling errors really. You're good, Daniel. Win it all in a 12-team non-flex league. Cool. I've got both Diggs, Devontae. Would you trade either for Hopkins plus a 24 first rounder? So as to stay win now and prepare for the future. I like your idea. That's actually what I was going to say. You're trying to maintain your points per game and add future value. There's no reason you can't look to do both, even on a winning. I love the idea. Hopkins, I'm a little unsure about. But I think trading Adams right now is decent play. But I think Adams is already getting the age stain. So it depends which way your league goes. Diggs still has the shiny new thing, or a random Adams, I find more often than not, is in the probably rostering him until he's finished category. But if you can find a good trade to do this with, then it's okay. I think a single first, it's okay. I don't mind this. But it's a little light for me. Zach, am I too high or low on Hopkins there? Like, I'm a little less sure that Hopkins is going to be Hopkins next year than Adams is going to be Adams, you know?
And
it isn't quite enough.
I'm with you on that, especially because, Daniel, you're saying you are the bull of the woods. You've got the team that should win it all in a 12-team league. If you're making this trade, there's a little bit more nebulousness, a little bit less surety in your wide receiver core. Because I agree, Peter.
Because we like the old guys. I'm thinking that little... Yeah. It doesn't even have to be picks, which is where people get scary. Like, is there a... If you add Madison to his side, not that team has it, but like a running back you really think could help a competitive team, even then I'm like, yeah, you're getting a first. So I might even lean that way, despite, Adams is much more sure this year than Hopkins. Like, it's not a world away. So if you like it, Daniel, it's your team, and the first means that you got a floor. You built yourself a floor, which is always nice in a house. But yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking, Zach. How far away is it for you? Like, is it just a Madison away?
It's not that far value wise. Like if I'm Russ, if I put my Dynasty outhouse hat on, then it's probably the Hopkins and the first side. Because I think you're at a point now where if you get a first for Devontae Adams, even though he's worth more than that production-wise, there aren't very many people paying a first for Adams. Plus, you're getting Hopkins back. But if I put myself in the way I play, if I am competing, I don't want to give up Devontae Adams, who I think should be a top 12 receiver again this year. I don't want to give that up for DeAndre Hopkins, who I think is maybe a top 24, like is in that next.
The median outcome is like he's a top 12 wide receiver for a stretch. Yeah. He's gonna finish top 24, and for a stretch he'll be top 12, and you'll be like, I lost my points per game advantage. And I see what you mean. Yeah.
And that's it. Like, it's not. I think, Daniel, I think it's a good trade value wise. I think getting the first and getting a startable receiver back is good, but your startable receiver is not going to give you what Devontae Adams is going to give you, probably. Like, and that's, again, Hopkins could come out and
he's pretty good.
Beat DeAndre Hopkins. Like, he's a good receiver, but he's also probably moving teams. You don't know. Like, there's just a lot of.
He's where Adams is in 2 years, Yeah. So
yeah.
And where I tend to normally fall in the middle of the value conversation of I kind of want my cake and I want my belly full of cake at the same time. And that's where I come into, does he have Khalil Herbert? Like, I'll take almost any points per game potential running back, because running backs are a little more tradable for a team doing something like this, I think. Just to, like, if Hopkins isn't Hopkins, he's not going to be Adams this year, then I'm still increasing my points per game. And like Zach said, he's probably getting a first at the last window where, even though he's worth more than that, the last window where you can easily get a first from an Adams. Diggs, I'm a little more sticky on. Diggs, I think his value's still better.
Yeah.
So, like, I think you should get a lot more for this. It's Adams that I'm willing to put into this more crutchy situation. Just do I have a good reason for that? Is it just no? I just prefer Diggs. I've always preferred Diggs, I guess. But yeah. So yeah, those are 3 opinions and 3 directions we'd take it, and ultimately it's you, Daniel. I think if you just accepted that trade, I don't think you're being bad at Dynasty or you're not making a Dynasty mistake, but you know what you're obviously you constructed it, you know what you're doing. I think you could eke out a little bit more to make it a little bit better for yourself. Zach says where he's a little bit more of a yes/no trader anyway, that you should probably know. And we do think I think you're right. Our house will probably be like, yeah, the value in the first. So you can walk all 3 directions and it's up to you. And so you've constructed a good trade there. It's the other thing I'd walk away. I really like the idea of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, if I'm a win now, I'm gonna try to win now. Like that's just how I am. But
that's what I'm trying to say here, Daniel and everyone else. I try not to be wishy-washy. I do have absolutes, which people also ding me for. When people only pay to one area of your content, they're constantly accusing you for being the opposite of what you are. Ever notice that? But I'm not trying to say you can do any. I'm saying because I think Dynasty, the best way to play Dynasty is to pick a direction for your team and walk in that direction. And if things change, like, okay, well, I have to come up with a new direction and then move that way. And exactly as you're already doing, you're trying to manage your points per game and your value. And that way you're never in a complete rebuild. But sometimes you could, reality sucks, and it puts you in a complete rebuild. It happens. But yeah, you know the bets you're making. And Zach's, and again, that path of if I'm winning, I'm winning. Adams is definitely scoring more points this year, and Diggs is definitely scoring more points, is actually a very valid way of playing. And you're still maintaining your points per game, and you can look for value other ways if you need it, or which you should want to try and do. So like all 3 are viable. It's about picking the direction you want to go. And my little answer was like a median, like go that direction, but maybe try and eke out a look. Like what extra little thing does he have on the end of his bench that he's like, I don't need Khalil Herbert. He just lost his job in the draft. Maybe, he could start some games. That's what running backs are about. And on a win now team, that matters a little bit more to you than maybe some Dynasty players in the direction they're walking. But anyway, sorry, I don't mean to spend too long on these, but like I've been doing boring stuff all day, so this is fun for me. D-Bags, 12 teams who flex PPR, start 12.
Other way around. D-Dags. You dyslexic.
I refuse to change and can't learn. Was offered Amon-Ra for Higgins and my 24-second. Okay, I prefer Amon-Ra, but is the gap big enough for a second?
I'd do that. I'd take Amon-Ra. I would. I would. I'd rather have Amon-Ra than Higgins.
And second round picks. I understand why you're tempted. I really do. I'm not outhouse. I don't have the fan club of Higgins as such, but he's a really good receiver. He's going to be good for a really long time. I can see how they are very close, but there is a tier gap, and I have it, and I mean those, especially those high tier gaps. I really think it's better to roster Amon-Ra, mainly for points per game reasons. Higgins is probably going to hold his value a little better because that draft capital always will bite players in the butt in value wise eventually. But anyway, and the other part of this is seconds aren't tier breaks for me. Like a second, it's the same way like 4 seconds doesn't add up to maybe 4 seconds, but 2 seconds doesn't add up to a first. There's not an even exchange rate here. It's a what do they call it? A parabolic relationship, where a second isn't quite enough to jump me up that significant of a tier. The lower down we get, like a second's almost too much to go from one tier to another. But that high, a second isn't quite enough. So yeah, I'd keep Amon-Ra here, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Having Higgins is going to be fine, but I think you've got more upside with Amon-Ra, and both at this point are young, good receivers, and so the difference to me in the points per game expectation is better than the second round value in 24. You could also say, depending on how strong you are at trading, you can add that. You're accruing value for another good wide receiver. You're moving aside. You can add that second to stuff. It's a very good move. Personally, on my teams, I want Amon-Ra for the season. But again, that comes to where your team situation is, like we should always be more building. And if I'm in any way inclined to think that this team is less competitive than I'd want it to be, Higgins in the second is a really good deal. And if you outhouse, you'd flip Higgins into something too. No,
he wouldn't flip Higgins.
You just roster him for
He would have Higgins on the wall behind.
He just hang it up, hang the roster up behind his chair. Yeah. Tyler, hey, PPR Superflex. I won the ship last year. Congrats, Tyler. Good job. Would you trade a 24 first, projected mid to late, but we always just kind of assume mid to late, and my 25 first for Breece Hall and Jerick McKinnon? I have CMC, but not many great options behind them. I'm actually getting a lot of questions right now with 25 and 26 first thrown in. I'm like, hold your horses. Try not to trade so much that far out. But I get, especially in June, I get the impetus. So let's look at this trade. A 24 first and a 25 first for Breece and Jerick McKinnon. That's basically 2 firsts for Breece Hall, and you're getting Jerick McKinnon. And where they're 24 and 25, I don't hate it. But here's the thing, it's running back, so I'm kind of buying when I see it and also when I need it. I'm not worried about my starting roster right now in June, especially at the running back position. So I don't think so. I think I could do something like this later if I needed to, or cheaper or better. Especially, and I say that especially because I'm worried how fast Breece Hall reminds us, because he's definitely one of those young good running backs, don't get me wrong. But I think there might be a lag. We've seen that with injuries before. It takes a second. And so you might even find a better window later. Not that you get a better trade, but you might get a better plus, or it might be in some way more advantageous to do it later, especially because you don't know you need running backs until you know, so you can give yourself that time. That's where my head would be. I think this trade is very fair. I think actually 2 seconds for Breece Hall is great, especially ones in 25. Who cares? But it's running back, so by default, in a vacuum, not looking at the team or knowing how this league plays, my default answer is I'll probably wait till the season, see what I need, and if I need to invest more in running back this year or trade CMC. Zach, you're humming and hawing, which means you've probably got a better answer. What you got?
No, I would do this. I would send the 2 first for Breece Hall. McKinnon may be valuable to especially if you're competitive, Tyler. I would do this because of 2 things. So normally, Peter, I'm with you on the running backs and not acquiring.
No, I get it. Breece Hall could easily be an exception. He's a young, great running back.
The exceptions right now are Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson. I think those 2 running backs are the beautiful kind of convergence of they're very young. And they have a 3-down skill set, which puts them in that upper echelon of backs where they could do what CMC does, what Barkley does, what Kamara did. Those are there are very few of those backs. And even if Breece Hall doesn't come back this year, I fully expect Breece Hall to start slow, have that kind of Saquon year coming up, because everybody except for Adrian Peterson had the year coming off the ACL where it's they're not quite there yet. They don't quite trust cutting on it, so they're not quite as sharp. But I think that, you see that at the end of the year, and all of a sudden acquiring whatever first you want in the 24 class is now on the table for Breece Hall. Or what I tend to do is trade for those young, proven wide receivers. By the end of this year, once you get Breece Hall back playing and being Breece Hall, one of those young, proven wide receivers may be Jackson Smith-Njigba. One of those young, proven wide receivers may be Jordan Addison. And then all of a sudden you can make that move, go get a receiver plus another pick, and you've just kind of shined on. You've had Breece Hall production, plus you're able to move your team forward at the end of the year because Hall is young and uber talented. So I think this is a good move. I really do.
This is actually another really good question to point out, what I don't and do like about fantasy content. my answers can come out mealy mouth because I'm like, if not, that. But when I try and state absolutes, I get clapped for that too. Because absolutely, I say no, Zach says yes. Both are very viable ways to play it, because honestly, there are different ways of playing in Dynasty. You have to know your league. You have to know how well the league goes, how well the trades go. And then you have a much better sense. You, Tyler, will know from, I think, that's why I like the Dynasty grind, because we both get, you know, which of what we just said clicks with your league. You're like, oh, no, I'll be able to trade Breece Hall, no problem. Then you're already on Zach's side, and it's a great way of playing it. Whereas if I just say no and spend 5 minutes like jerking around making fun content of me disagreeing with Zach, that's one way to have fun content. But like learning and trying to get decent answers in Dynasty should be, here are the absolutes, but here are the contexts, and then you apply it to your league. Like I think this is why this shows or stream or whatever, why I like doing this. If you know what I mean.
For me, Peter, it's why I'm still doing this, because of this interplay. Because we have a great audience. We have the chat is awesome, because they're not just there to get the answer, they're there to understand how to get to an answer, and that to me is much more valuable.
So I didn't mean to do a promo for this show that no one else play in the middle of this show, but like it keeps occurring, especially as I'm writing this episode, like coming up with definites is how to help people that don't pay attention to everything you're ever going to say or write. Like no one's going to read the body of my work to understand where most of it comes from. And so you have to come up with like, do this, do that. Or Adam Haas says heuristics, one of the best things I ever came across to help me learn and build. But at the same time, like at a certain point, especially if you're getting deep into it where you're watching a stream on a Wednesday night every week or every other week or every now and again, like you got that, you know, basics. Even if you feel different, you play differently and you prefer different things and you build differently and you think I'm an idiot for liking wide receivers because they're so deep and you don't agree, whatever, you know where I'm coming from. And so like I don't find that stuff useful at a certain point, if you know what I mean. So I like this. But anyway, sorry. Yes, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks, Tyler. Sorry, I'll go off on your question there a little bit, but there you are. Jason, 12 teams who flex half-point PPR, tight end premium, Lockett or Schultz? Schultz is really interesting right now because he's definitely in the I don't care category of tight ends, but at the same time, he's one of those tight ends in the I don't care category. I'm like, they carry no value, but he's going to start and going to be pretty good. He's not going to provide flex value and everything we hate about tight ends, but he's basically something you can add for something that's much more likely to be nothing. And I kind of like that. Like I ended up with him in a few places and I tried a few tester trades. Can you get anything that has any way of being more than just that tight end? And the answer is constantly no. And I looked up the trades and I wrote them off DLF, and he's just a piece in larger trades if he's traded at all, which makes me think if you just need a tight end, well, Waller and Ingram and Dolchich or whoever your favorite tight end gets all the press, and that guy's just sitting there. And I'm starting to like that guy at tight end more and more, with the middle class being pretty solid. But that's neither here nor there. And in this league format, I think I prefer Schultz because Lockett's value comes down a little bit, even though Lockett's been perennially undervalued by Dynasty, so you've never been able to get out of him for what you should be able to get out of him. And so that's even worse now, especially with JSN coming to the party. And with the half-point PPR, his value is a little less anyway. And so Schultz, I probably prefer Schultz here. And I hate it.
No,
I've always been prided myself on being one of the highest on Lockett, Marcus Brown, and then later Devontae Smith. Like no one can shake me, but here I'm like, yeah, I get it.
I don't know. The Lockett's coming off a wide receiver 13.
Oh, he's fantastic.
in half point PPR. I'm going to take that over a tight end, and that's not to say that Schultz is bad, but he's in that, like, he is the faceless tight end that is between tight end 8 and 15 or 18.
I don't know. I think the premium combined with it's even is what we're saying. It depends. Like if you could use a tight end, and he's no more than that. He's not someone that is like providing you an edge at tight end. He just nullifies most of what they can throw at you at that position. That's basically all he does.
So like Schultz
means you don't have to have 5 roster spots dedicated to the position either.
Schultz in the Dallas offense tied to Dak is different to me than Schultz in Houston tied to Stroud. We don't know what Houston's offense looks like, but we know they didn't move the ball at all last year. Like he was the reason why Schultz to me was valuable is because you knew he was going to see 100 targets. I don't think he's like he may see 100 targets, but it's going to be harder to see 100 targets with a rookie quarterback with a bad offense in Houston than it is with an offense that is moving the ball up and down the field. Dak's throwing the ball 600 times. Like it just, to me, it is, I'll take the Tyler Lockett points for the year rather than Schultz. I don't think either of them have any value. I don't think you're
neither of them have value. That's the thing. It's just where do you need the stuff? And you're right. I prefer Lockett, but I think I'm moving the needle on the Seahawks offense a little bit more than you anyway with JSN arriving. You expect less from JSN this year. Not that you're at all lower than him, but just in terms of how much of that offense he'll be this year.
I think it's going to be difficult for JSN to come in and I mean, like you talk you talk about earning targets. Like he's got to earn targets from 2 of the top 12 or 15 wide receivers in the NFL.
No, what I think he's going to do is rest the smaller percentages that go to other. It's going to be just those 3. Like those are the only 3 catch passes. But all that does is shrink opportunity. While Lockett's still going to be a part of that offense, it just shrinks scoring opportunities and just overall opportunities.
Or it makes their offense better. Which
it's going to make their I think we can agree on that one. We're pretty happy with the wide receiver group they have. The only way I'm framing that way is for Jason. That's kind of the question. If you expect a little more of a split in scoring opportunities purely for Lockett, then maybe Schultz is fine here because neither have any value. But if not, then just maybe you could make a decision that way, or if you don't have a starting tight end. But I prefer having Lockett in a vacuum. But I think in this scoring format, I don't mind taking Schultz. But you're right. Both Schultz has a risk in terms of his role in his new offense too. Honestly, I don't know. Probably just stand pat. It's not enough to make me move. If you have Lockett, I don't know. I particularly want Schultz. If you have Schultz, I don't know. I particularly get a lot of value out of taking Lockett. But it's up to you. Corey, if I started a reverse listener league where I'm the listener and I get some of guys on DLF to join, would you do it? And Corey, if you can arrange it with me beforehand, I'll talk to anyone anytime. If you got a podcast, let me know. I'll arrange a time to talk to you.
No, he wants to be in a league with a bunch of DLF guys. Is what he's saying. Not he doesn't want you to talk to him. He wants you to play with him. I'm not a DLF guy. Corey.
I understand.
Sorry,
but. Where I was going, I have started a Patreon league, but they want to play in Sleeper, so I hate it, and it just stopped my whole idea of making more than one. No, I can't really commit to that just because I only have so many leagues, and while I have expanded them a little bit because I've wanted some more, I still like not having too many leagues, if you know what I mean. I happily play with you sometime, Corey, but it's going to have to be the time is right, and I'm not at him right now, but I appreciate you. I would check out. We play a lot in these redraft leagues. So it's Scott Fishbowl, the biscuit bowls going on right now. And what's the other one I just signed up? The EFFC. It's a European version of the Fantasy Best Ball League. I'm happy to play with you anywhere I can, but I'm not in all leagues right now. Thank you. There is a Scott Fishbowl Potterful, Mr. Scampers. There is an SFB Potterson shirt out.
There is. It's a land shark lager. It's awesome.
I think I've seen the land shark one.
Yeah.
Lads, hello.
Genji.
Josh M. I also have Dak Prescott, and that's from that trade all the way back 3 trades ago because I've been speaking too much.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a super flex. Two top 10 quarterbacks is good.
Yeah, getting more good. Yeah, you're good. Sean, hey guys, 10 teams through flex half point PPR, no tight end premium. Rebuilding this year was offered Michael Pittman and a 24 first and a 25 third, whatever, for Kyle Pitts and Tank Bigsby. Would appreciate your input. Appreciate the way you said that, Sean. You're not looking for an answer. Just give me what you think, and then I'll make the decision. I think that's the right attitude. So Pittman a first. That's it for Kyle Pitts. I think I just want Pitts in Dynasty. That's where all the upside value is.
Yeah, I'm still worried about him falling out of favor, but it is Pitts.
Okay.
But that's like quasi tempting. If it wasn't Pittman and like the throw in was not a 25 third, it might be a little more tempting. But that's like I'd rather stick with Pitts and like
it might be one you can work with and turn it into a trade that you like. Yeah.
We forget that. Even though Kyle Pitts was disappointing last year, and he was disappointing as a rookie, he had a 1,000-yard. Yeah, he had a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, and the only reason he was disappointed is because he did not catch the ball in the end zone, and so it's
one of those we don't know the future, we don't know what's going to happen, but if in a year he's the situation cleans up, he's catching touchdowns, we're going to look back and like, how did we not put Kyle Pitts on every team? But at the same time, because we don't know the future, it could easily be, he's consistently been good and blah, 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 blah.
So this is a question for you, Peter. Who do you prefer as a receiving target in that Atlanta offense? Do you prefer Pitts or do you prefer London?
Oh, God, I don't know. I'm not a quarterback. In terms of trades?
No. Just which player do you think is better? Because that's going to be the question this year to me, because that offense is not going to sustain two top tier receiving options, especially after they drafted Bijan. They want to run the ball. They want to run the ball a lot. They have a young quarterback who's not necessarily a great thrower. Ritter's fine, but he's not awesome. So one of those players, I think it's Pitts, but one of those players.
I was going to say, in just the little team expectation I do would lean tight end in that situation. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not sophomore, good rookie season, more down the field kind of a guy.
Yep.
So, that's a good point.
So, yeah, Sean, we'd go Pitts, but it's not like Pitts. It's strategically, I think Pitts is the better option. And
it's another one where it's a strategic trade. Strategically, like it's not like, apart from the Mahomes trade where we're like, yes. It's like you probably put yourself in this position for the future. And that's this trade. Like, more times out of 10, you go with the upside of Pitts. Sammy S, 10 teams who flex start 12. Anthony Richardson or Gibbs and a 25 first. This is going to differ for both of it. This might be another. I'm waiting and seeing on Richardson. I'm trying to pay respect to the journey he has in front of him, and if he does it, I'll be more excited than the rest of you. Promise. So Gibson the first, probably. Yeah, it's not enough value, but it's like the risk on a quarterback like that's too big for me.
I don't mind doing that. I think that's a great way to mitigate that risk, Peter. I think the people keep running out Anthony Richardson as he's going to hit like Jalen Hurts.
He has to. Like in redraft, he's going like as a really hot.
And he could do that, but like people are not acknowledging the fact that there is also a chance that he plays like Malik Willis and just doesn't ever materialize. And it's
Here's
not
the thing, he could actually do it and not do it this. Like Josh Allen didn't do it year one. He's the closest elevation, and that guy passed a lot more in college. We've been through this a billion ways, and like this is fine. I get the onside, I get the other side. So it's all about how you play that gamble. Yeah. And that's what it is. And that, ultimately that's what we're doing. We're trying to but sometimes it's just a straight up take your bet. And for me, I'll lean Gibbs on the first.
Now, if I have the choice between Richardson and Gibbs in a Superflex rookie draft, I'm going to take Richardson most likely because I'm going to take that swing with the upside. Where this is a straight up trade, getting Gibbs in the first, I think is, it's you mitigate a ton of that risk. You mitigate the downside of Richardson. I think Gibbs is going to be a successful running back. Even if he's not, you're going to have people that are willing to trade for him because he is that pass catching running back in Detroit that everyone has been so enamored with for the last forever. I mean, since before Amir Abdullah. So
I think Corey was trying to say A-Rich here.
He was. And
yeah, okay, he was answering. Okay, good answer, Corey. Like, I don't think there's a bad answer and a good trade, and that's the other reason I like this show. Most people aren't bringing us crap because they know a thing or two. There's no bad answer, and so that's why I like you could be approaching it one way or the other, and we're just gonna give you thoughts on it. But yeah. A-Rich is fine too. Some people would run out the expectation of Gibbs so far that it makes it easily that. Like, some people expect more than I do from Gibbs, and then they'll be like, "Oh, that's a great trade." Also possible. But that's not where I'm at.
It's really easy to see Gibbs being like a top 6 running back after this year,
especially right now. Top 6 running backs, like, not that it's not hard or there aren't that many of them, but like the top 6 running back isn't. Isn't LaDainian Tomlinson anymore. It's his likely path to volume could be a top 6 running back.
Actually, he's a top 6. He's a top 6 running back right now, according to DLF. So, there's still room to grow.
Fair enough. Mag, 10-team half-point PPR start 10. Trade Gibbs and Addison for CeeDee Lamb. Gibbs and Addison. I think it's Gibbs and Addison side, isn't it?
It is.
Like, Addison's less secure than CeeDee Lamb, but Gibbs is more because he's a running back rookie. It's a different thing. And so that shrinks that gap. And I think I have CeeDee Lamb in the same tier as everyone else, but I kind of prefer all the other receivers there. Like, I prefer Amon-Ra, I prefer Waddle, I prefer AJ Brown. And I think a lot of people don't have that exact same order. And so I'm a little... not lower, but lower on CeeDee Lamb, if that makes sense. Or maybe that's just confirmation. Like, I was in last year and I was top 12 breakout, and now I want to cash out, maybe too early. But like, I like the Gibbs Addison side here.
In 1 year from now, on June 21st, 2024, Peter, we'll sit down and we'll remember this. The community right now is way too low on Jordan Addison.
I got a tweet. I scheduled it. Like, I don't often make tweets knowing I'm going to try and use them as a receipt, but like 2 weeks before the draft, I just said, "You're all too low on Jordan Addison." Just no context. And I saved it, and I'm like, I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that.
The community is even lower on Addison now after he went 23rd overall to one of the best landing spots possible for him. Like, he landed in Minnesota. On the opposite side from the best wide receiver in the NFL. You could not have drawn it up. Jordan Addison is a player who the profile is a number 1 playing from the number 2 slot. Like, that's what he does. He is a number 2 wide receiver who can be a 1 from that number 2 spot. I don't think he's a 1 if you put him on an island and make him beat the number 1 corner all the time. But I think if you put him in the slot or you slide him opposite from Justin Jefferson, next year at this time, we're going to look back and go, man, I can't believe how much too low we were on Jordan Addison. And so, Mag, I think this is, as much as we like CeeDee Lamb, I think this is a great trade for you.
Like, I use your trick now, and I have for a year or two, of having a DM with myself, because I don't. But there are some things I don't keep receipts, except for the stuff that I track on my ranks and how well they work out, mostly for my own benefit. But every now and again, I post something specifically. I'm going to put that in the DM, and it's like when everyone was too high on the 2 wrong breakouts. And I was like, I'm going to need that later. And that's one of the few kind of receipt tweets I've put in that DM to myself. And it was on March 20th, sorry. And I'm like, I'm gonna need that later. It was just out the blue and in reference to nothing going on. And I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna need that later. And it's just one of those things. It's like the Rashad Bateman career arc thing. Like it's like those obvious outliers, those obvious paths where sometimes you just get to see between the clouds and you get lucky, and that feels like one. I mean, sometimes they're not, and I just never mention it again. But that honestly feels like one. You're right. Alexander F.S. I don't know why I struggle with words. I really don't. Sorry, Alexander.
English is your second language. Don't apologize.
That's fair. I must just speak British, I guess. New friends, home league, gonna draft soon. League is a 12-team Superflex star 11 point per tight end premium. How should I value tight ends in the startup draft? Prioritize getting a stud tight end. Tight end premium doesn't, this is a standard line. I think most nerds would tell you that it doesn't change the order, and it definitely doesn't make more tight ends more relevant in the flex spot, which is really their problem. But it does group those top few together a little more higher and push them up just a little bit, if that makes sense. If you can imagine your rankings on the draft board, if Travis Kelce goes at the end of the first round, he's now a little bit further up in the first round. If Mark Andrews is a second-round pick, he's now a little bit closer to where Kelce was. Same with Kittle and Kyle Pitts. And the rest are just kind of the same. Maybe you budge them up a touch, but not too much, because they're still not providing that much more relevant points per game versus most flex decisions, positional advantage-wise. Zach, do you have a better way of saying that? That's just
so I heard you talking to John Hogue about the way I play quarterbacks, and the leagues that I play quarterbacks like that are leagues that have this, 1.75, or this is a two point tight end premium, like a full extra point. And the thing that affords me the ability to play quarterback that way is I will always have at least 2, sometimes 3 of those tight ends, the Kelce, Kittle, Andrews, rostered, because one of those is my second quarterback. And then if I have another quarterback that hits, then I have a flex that's actually like a super flex, even though it's not a super flex. It's a a capital super space flex, not a super flex, all one word. And so that's how the top tight ends score so much. And it's not, there aren't very many of them. Go look at the tight ends that had 100 targets or more last year. And those are the only tight ends that matter at all in this, but they matter more than normal. And so it doesn't, people do tight end premium because they think it's going to make the tight ends more valuable, like all tight ends more valuable and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't. It doesn't, but it makes those top tight ends more valuable, and it makes them even more valuable than having like a wide receiver 2 or a running back 2 in your flex if you have one of those top 3 or 4 tight ends. So yes, prioritize getting multiple stud tight ends.
Just a few things. One, I would prioritize tight ends getting 98 targets or more for no specific reason at all. Just 98 targets would be my line. Also, I agree. You prioritize the first few. You play it like I play tight end, I think, more like quarterback than anyone else. That's the way. And if you play it like quarterback, the position kind of opens up. Like it plays out real simple. Like tight end, like quarterbacks. While there are surprises and Josh Allen elevating in ability in terms of fantasy points and actual play more than any other historic, surprises happen. But the position, as a rule, is fairly predictable. And it opens up a little bit if you play it like tight end. The other thing I would say is it heightens everything else because you're looking for those top few a little bit more thirstily, because the reason for doing so is a little bit more. So it doesn't make Trey McBride any better or his potential upside any better, but on that rare 3% of high outcomes where he does become one of those, he's more important. And so what I would say is that Well, the play I literally heard you describe it on your podcast recently was a scattershot tight end approach. You just constantly draft a bunch or pick up a bunch, and they don't work out, fine. If they work out a little bit, you trade them, and then you just do it again until you find a Kittle, till you find a Kelsey, and then that's you've got one. And so, like in your rookie draft this year, like I've got one league where I can't find a way to get Brenton Strange on my bench because I have a couple tight ends. I have Schultz, for example, it's like my tight end 3. And I just can't find room for him on my bench. But I keep wanting to because there's a premium and I increase, like that's more important to me. Playing that roulette of maybe I'll find a guy, the Greg Dolch, the Trey McBrides, the random shots, not random, but the way too often shots on Kenny Yeboah last year or Brenton Strange this year, they become a little bit more important because hitting that top very, very small likelihood outcome actually has a little bit more premium on it. And where tight ends are a little more dependable and a good way to approach it, like late round QB is a really good way to approach quarterback in general, not looking at a specific draft because that can change it. Scattershot tight end, which I'm just stealing from. I can't even remember his name. He'll fade into oblivion,
Sounds
and I will take credit for it from now on. It is a good way of playing tight end, and that becomes a little bit more focus on me. So, like in your rookie draft, you should be looking more at those, and you're probably going to just churn a bunch of them off the back of your roster. But while you're prioritizing those top few, you're also prioritizing those bottom few, those shots to try and find another one. That's the only other note I'd add. Like that becomes a more important process because there's more incentive on hitting that 1 percentile outcome. PPR league, as I would expect. Thank you. Brees is the Adrian Peterson bucket. Depends how you mean. Adrian Peterson still never caught passes, although I'm sure there's someone out there still saying he's just about to.
He's talking
for the modern
about
NFL
recovery. He's talking about recovering from the
ACL.
Which
well,
may
be
like
fantastic.
maybe, but
be fantastic.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I'm not gonna guess it, but that'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm rooting for all players to get healthy, so that'd be nice. Freak Brees reminds me of AP. He looks like he would definitely take. Okay. That's a bad memory, but thanks, the freak. No problem, Tyler. It's what we enjoyed doing, so I appreciate you asking. David, 14-team league, Superflex, half-point tight end premium, full PPR. I'm starting Tua and Geno, good quarterback, solid. J.K. Dobbins, White, Gibbs, J.J. Chase, Wilson, Garrett, I'm assuming Waddle. Those are in the wrong order, but cool. St. Brown should be higher too. This is a great team. Bellinger at tight end. So you have no tight end. Got it. And only a 25 first. Yeah, that's a trick. Whenever you see a hot roster, you're like, your picks look like mine do, don't they? Yeah, no picks till 25. What should I do? Keep managing your points per game and your value. And yeah, you're definitely pushing to win. First thoughts is JK shouldn't be running back 1. You should either have worse running backs and more value to trade for them in season, or a better running back 1. That's where I'm at with your team because you want to go win. And while I like J.K. Dobbins and I think he's got all the upside, as long as Lamar Jackson's there, the upside isn't really there for his value for my money. So who can I trade him into right now? It's one of my first questions. Not that you have to. But that's a way I'd be looking to try and improve this team. You either want JK to be liquid, so you can trade for the running backs you need in season, whichever guy is a McKissick during your playoffs, and you need a second-round pick to trade for him, or you need a guy you think, no questions, he's top 5, And yeah, tight end is a problem for you as well. In my opinion, not that tight end's ever really a problem, like we were just discussing. But you have so many good young assets here and no pressure to do it, but so many different trades you can make. It's really hard to decide. J.K. Dobbins is the only one that stands out to me as someone that has value right now, more value than potential upside. So I'd be looking to see what I could do with it. And in this situation, maybe I'd be shopping for a tight end, but that's a weird thing to go looking for. You're looking for the Kelsey owner to be scared of his age because he's that way. Or the Kittle is the best tight end in that group. I think that you can find decent values on, but I don't know what the J.K. Dobbins to Kittle trades look like, but it's something I'd explore. Or you just want to turn JK or whoever you can, but that's one that stands out to me from this list, into that value so you can start shopping for the scatter shot at tight end. And again, more value you can get means you have that value to turn into the running backs you need, whether it's Aaron Jones or Isaiah Pacheco or whatever else in season. But again, that's the basic way I'm trying to play rosters. And they'll make more or less sense depending on how your league works, how trades are frequent, and so on and so forth, like we've been saying. Zach, how about yourself?
David, what I would be trying to do is, you say you don't have much depth. I would be trying to look at what I have on my bench and try to figure out how many running backs are backup running backs with a potential path to, a game or two, depending on injury and that sort of thing. So if you have guys who, Roshan Johnson is the immediate one who's not the running back one right now in Chicago, but could work his way into a role, or if there's an injury to Herbert, all of a sudden assumes a major role. That type of running back, that's what I want all through my bench. Because your running backs are weak, but if you have running backs who can be weekly strong and weekly two-ease, so like strong week to week. So if you know this running back is going to start, all of a sudden your running backs are not weak anymore because you can, patch together weeks and weeks. And Peter, I think you're right. I think David, you're going to need something at tight end.
I mean, you can throw that 25 first at people. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to talk about that part of it.
No, and that, that's fine. Like, I don't want to throw the 25 first at people if I don't.
That's the thing. It's too far out, even on a team this young.
But it's one you can always go back. You can always go back and reacquire. So, go make a play for this year. Spend your 25 first. Go get a tight end or go get a running back that makes your team really competitive, because any of those players, Jefferson is worth 3 first. Chase is worth 3 first. Wilson, Waddle, St. Brown, they're probably worth 2.5 first, right now. So you have the capital to go revamp your team later. So play for this year. Go spend that 25 first. Make your team really competitive this year, because your wide receivers are going to score a ton of points. If you get another if you get another advantage at tight end, or if you can get a running back that is undervalued right now that you can slide in there and get points from, do that. And then worry about your 25 first when, after this season or headed into next season, whenever you decide you're ready to revamp your team. But it's a great
about
team.
These wide receivers is you can cash out of any of them at any point. So if you're in a winning position by week 10, but an injury happens or you don't quite have the firepower, you can make a good trade and unfortunately trade any of those young great wide receivers for what you need. And I like that, but I don't want to have to.
Yep.
I was re-listening. JJ Zachariason produces an evergreen podcast this week. He didn't put out a new one. He reproduced his ambiguous backfields one, and you can try and play running back like that. Obviously JJ Zachariason's talking about by finding the breakouts, the players that are more likely to do better than some people expect, points over expecting, go target them in trades. But in Dynasty, my thought process, or the way I found as a default, not in every league, but the way I typically try to play, is that value isn't infinite. If I don't have value, I'm just going to stock it up. And instead of trying to play that more redraft-centered game of who's the ambiguous backfield leader, whether it's Herbert or Roshan Johnson, are two great examples that would fit into that podcast, and you should keep in your mind when you're listening to it, because if you listen to this, you definitely listen to Late Round QB or What Are You Doing? Because that's the exact type of backfield he's talking about. But instead of trying to play that, because of the way running backs work in Dynasty, I'm going to try and get the value so that I can actually, if I'm definitely in a winning position, instead of having to try and cash out one of these players, I'm like, oh, that stuff that I have that's seconds or first, or a good wide receiver who's not quite as good as the ones I already have, I can go and trade that for the guy who won, Roshan or Herbert, or, you've got Rashad White, or whoever it is. Because I think that's an advantage of Dynasty, where you can just concentrate value. And when you find yourself in that position, you can just use that to buy what you need instead of having to worry about it, especially where you've got that core of wide receivers that you could try and cash out. You could try and put yourself in a situation right now where you don't necessarily have to. But again, where I can only point to J.K. Dobbins, it's not the best plan in the world, maybe for you, especially depending on how you know your league operates or would trade in season. But I think like the guy who actually lands that ambiguous backfield leader in season, you have more trade candidates because more teams are like, I'm not going to quite make it, but I did really well on this guy who's not going to carry value into the following season. And so they're more likely to let you trade for them because you're in a winning position. But again, that's just like, if I'm explaining it well, where I think the situation I want to put my team in is you're winning and you have stuff to go buy that 1 year of points because, Isaiah Pacheco is just having a season. No one's going to want him after this season. Or J.D. McKissick is the example that I think Zach always runs to. You can just go get him because you have that second sitting around. And that's the situation when I want to try and build for myself in June when I've got nothing else to do, instead of trying to game out who's going to be the right running back or guess what the season's actually going to bring. Put myself in a position where your wide receivers are set, quarterbacks are set. You should be in a pretty good position that you have what you need to try to make that move instead of trying to do it right now. When in Dynasty, you can put yourself in a situation where it doesn't work out because you didn't see 3 months into the future, because no one can do that very accurately. And it doesn't work out. And also you don't have many moves you can make to try and go back to the situation you were in. But again, that's some way of trying to put your team into a situation. But there are many different ways of playing Dynasty, but that's where my head goes to. And that's why the trade running backs is such a thing, because those are the guys that we have a little more ambivalence around who's going to be the guy that you need in season. Maybe you can pay J.K. Dobbins points for less in season because all the running backs that break out more often on a year-to-year basis. But again, I'm banging on about it as if this is a big plan, but I mean, that's just the way I'm thinking about it. And you asked for thoughts, so there you
go. How or what do you think you would need to add to your third to go get Tyler Higbee, who is not a name that people are thinking about? That, like David, Higbee's that's a tight end that I would be going to add right now if I could trade for Tyler Higbee, if I could say, one of my bench guys in a third or Bellinger in a third, something like that to go get Higbee. That's a place where I would be, I'd be happy starting Tyler Higbee. And I don't think you have to pay up for him.
Yeah. I think looking around, because again, your league is going to depend on a lot of the moves you can make, but I think poking around at tight ends is a really good direction to go in here. And the other thing is, like, you've stacked up White and Gibson, and you just keep looking for those waiver wire guys, or those like Zach said, those twos that might be ones, or those ones that might actually be ones that people don't like so much, that you can just stack up so you have more opportunities to win at that position as well. And again, it's going to come down to what's available in your league, but those are the directions I'm trying to head. I'm poking around at tight end. I'm poking around at looking for more things I know I can trade in season when I know what it is I need or who it is I need, if I'm in a winning position. And just trying to stack up more of those running backs. And to be fair, the teams I have that are in this situation where I have great wide receivers, normally I have at least one less than you do, by the way, David, so you've done really well. You also have JSN thrown on the end there, which is nice. And I normally don't have a J.K. Dobbins leading my backfield. Hopefully I got a few picks that I'm going to try and do what I just explained in. So I think you've built this team well. You've definitely been moving in a direction. You're doing pretty well with it. Just wanted to throw that out. B-Dags, 12 teams who flex start 12. Inbox offer. 324 firsts. Okay. And a second for Trevor Lawrence. The value's right. Team situation probably decides it. I mean, it's hard to replace a Trevor Lawrence, but he's not one of those top 5. And I think we do get a few more like great top 12 quarterbacks, a Tua, a Lawrence, even Daniel Jones, which is a weird breakout, but that happened last year. I think I take the gamble on the value there.
And especially if, and I know we can't predict 24 first this far out, but if you're looking at the teams that those firsts are on in their bottom third of the league, then especially if 2 of those are bottom third, then I'm in. I'm good. Let's take the picks.
And that's not like
I like
pretty
Trevor
happy
Lawrence,
with
and
having Trevor Lawrence at that.
I think
That's
he takes a little bit of a step forward this year too. But
yeah, it's definitely good. But yeah, Dynasty's fickle, man. And Brandon L is giving London for Tyreek an overpay. Technically,
I would do that almost unless my team is terrible. I am doing that.
It's a great trade for teams going in opposite directions because London is going to have more value. Tyreek is going to score more points.
Yeah.
There might actually be a downturn on London because I don't think he's going to be able to. He's just not going to be able to. Not that he's not. That situation is awful. Okay. And like we were just talking about with Pitts and London, it's like, I don't. They are good. They will impress inside that situation, but sometimes impressing in a situation isn't enough to impress Dynasty ADP or value. And he's kind of in that window where there might be a better time to trade for him. But if you're going in a certain direction, you don't care about that near as much because Hill is also going in that value direction, even if he does well, which he should more likely do well because, like we were just talking about Devontae Adams, he's going to be that next conversation. And so if these teams are going in opposite directions, perfect trade. I hope I'm on the Tyreek side so I can take advantage of the points.
And this has been strictly
same position trades, by the way. I normally just hate as a default. Like it's rare. Like I like this trade a lot for both teams if they're in the right situation. Carry on. Sorry.
No, I was going to say this has been strictly though, Brandon, like fantasy. We still don't like. I don't know if you've seen there was an incident with Tyreek Hill where, there's some kind of muddiness to how serious it was, but apparently he like slapped somebody in the back of the head, and whether it was I don't know yet, but it's not like Tyreek Hill is never. It's never just a clean like go get Tyreek Hill, but like from a fantasy
actually, that's a good reminder because it's not fresh on the memory, but he is one of those players that it is uncomfortable to roster until like again I try to separate the player for a lot of reasons from the fantasy points or fantasy statistics, but that's a big one because he has been and probably continues to be a terrible human being. That's a fair point, Zach. It depends what your tolerance is for that. I don't know anything about that incident. That's the first I've heard of it. Just keep my head down in the sheets, I'd keep London personally, and I think that'd be very fair. Where most teams should probably lean towards the value as well. No, but I'm looking to buy Tyreek at all, but I'm not, and that's also again a fair way to play. Not fair. Good. There you go. The freak. I traded away Diggs for Olave. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I don't hate that. Diggs is just a player favorite for me. Like I really like Diggs as a player, the way he plays and the statistics I've seen. But like, that's just a good trade.
But yeah, expecting is probably a little firm of a word, but you're expecting Olave to be the next Diggs. So that's
value and points wise, yep. I don't. Yeah, there's very few players I'd be like, he's as good as Diggs because I just think Diggs is so good. But I mean, again, in the same way we're just talking about fantasy, and that's just a good trade. Same position trades usually suck. You guys are stepping up your same position trades. James Martin, I got an offer, Superflex PPR, Kyler Murray and St. Brown for Michael Carter. Oh, okay. Bryce Young in the Superflex. Okay. Jameson Williams and an early 24 second. I get the Bryce Young side. I think I keep Murray and St. Brown pretty easily there.
Yep.
I kind of get it, but Michael Carter is just, I don't care. Jameson Williams, I'm personally not taking that ride, although I do think there's a solid reason for valuing him as like a first, a wide receiver in this class, like a good mid to late first round one, but I'm just not on that ride. I prefer Addison and JSN and
like Johnson. To me, breaking this down, Kyler,
so Murray, and the St. Brown, like that's what it holds for me. Go
breaking this down, Kyler over Bryce Young, but it's close. St. Brown over everything in that plus a first and maybe another first. So yeah, it's Murray and St. Brown for me pretty easily, James.
Yeah. But it is your team. Brian Ford, and I hear Kyler Murray plays video games, so that's the thing. Brian Ford, is it easier to mitigate inefficiency with volume?
Yes.
Than
the
or
other
to
way
mitigate
around.
a lack of volume with efficiency? No, that's not a thing.
You want volume.
Is this even a good question? Does it just vary too much from case to case?
Yeah,
You
no,
you're the actual engineer, so maybe I'll give my 2 cents takes afterwards.
It's a great question, and in like most things, the volume, like what we're doing in terms of fantasy football is giving point value to counting stats. You get more counting stats if you have more chance to count. And so the efficiency, so like we keep going back to Christian Watson with how efficient he was scoring touchdowns last year. Like that is hard to do. And we know it's hard to do because look at the other players who did. Oh, wait, there aren't very many other players who did it. But look at how many players who score a lot of points on volume. There are a lot of those. So it's easier. It's better as if you're betting. Peter and I always kind of use this as a buzzword, but mitigating failure. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the best bet the most often, not always the winning bet, but the bet that has the chance to win the most often. And the bet with this is you bet on the volume because volume has a better chance of return than the efficiency. And you hope with efficiency that it drives volume. Like that's literally what you're hoping is the guy who is efficient gets looked at and maybe gets more volume, but I'd rather just take the guy who has the volume.
Adam Harstead once said that volume is efficiency. I'm still trying to understand that. I asked him personally on a podcast and he explained it incredibly well, and I still don't understand it, but that's a point too. And Zach only has 7 minutes left on his timer, so I'm going to try and say this quick. But Brian, this is a really good question. Yeah. The fact that you're asking this question is also really good. It means you're asking interesting and valid questions, and you should try and get answers. I'm going to give you one, but it doesn't mean it's the answer. If you want data, try and answer it for yourself, which I'd encourage you to do. Check out my pinned tweet, man. Check out my link tree. Like, I want other people to look, because if I'm wrong, I need to know. But here's my too long didn't read takeaway about inefficiency and volume. 1, follow Blair Andrews on Twitter. He's not on Twitter very much, which I hate because there's no one I want to argue with more, honestly, than Blair Andrews. But everything he writes, I read. Like, if he's written something and I haven't read it, I want to change that too. Like, I think he's one of the better in terms of insights that not everyone notices. He gets in the weeds and he really notices very interesting things. He once wrote up as part of his series for RotoViz. I think he still writes for RotoViz, or he did. That efficiency can lead to volume. Specifically, second-year players who are efficient in receiving fantasy points over expected, which is a RotoViz efficiency metric of how many points you're scoring relative to the volume that you were getting. For running backs specifically, he gets really into the weeds, and it's a really interesting article. But what he did show more broadly is that efficiency can be a sign that volume grows more than you would expect from the rest of what they did in the season, or what they did as rookies, or their draft capital, or anything else. And so efficiency can lead to volume, especially in that kind of second-year circumstance. It's a really interesting thing to look at, but I recommend reading the article because it's good, and I'm not going to do a good job of explaining it. So definitely check out his article. Efficiency can lead to volume. Like, he literally proved it, at least in that specific circumstance. But broadly, I think Adam Harstead's point, volume is efficiency, goes to efficiency bounces back and forth, essentially based on, well, talent, the ineffable, undefinable quality that is talent, but also just based on circumstance and the season and who you're marked up against and the reality of the world, how well you're playing, getting in the zone, all those things that we no way can account for. Whereas a player getting volume tends to lead to more volume. And so the volume itself is the efficiency you're looking for. They're efficiently earning that volume, if you will.
My favorite thing is when a player gets volume and is inefficient, because half of the metrics crowd yells really loud about what a terrible player they are, which pushes their value down, which means you can get points for less. It's great.
This is actually why I pointed out Blair's article, because it's really important to notice, especially when smart people actually understand this stuff. I engage in it to try and come to opinions, but I'm not a statistician. I don't have the qualifications, that there is nuance to it. Efficiency can lead to volume. But the other thing I was going to say, it's like a 9 to 10 straight up loss for betting on it. Because outside of those circumstances where a Tyreek Hill shows in a small circumstance what they can do, and so the team's like, let's try and get that guy more involved, not specifically Tyreek Hill, but you know what I'm talking about, and more involved, then mostly it's just a problem with small or large numbers, depending on which way Adam described it. In other words, it's Lamar Miller being incredibly efficient and much better than much better than his volume suggested he was. So he should get more volume. And everyone shouts for it, then he gets more volume, and it turns out he was very efficient in the way he was being used, but if you use him more, that efficiency drops off. Because as much as we all like to clown everyone that we possibly can and think that we know stuff, a lot of coaches kind of know what they're doing, and so they're using them in effective ways. And so more volume actually leads to below average efficiency, and you get a negative return on that added volume. So there's a lot running into it. And most of the time, the Gabe Davises of the world, the Mecole Hardmans, the Lamar Millers, any position, efficiency is just a false signal. I mean, it means they played really well, don't get me wrong. And again, like Blair Andrews said, in certain situations, you can say, well, that efficiency could actually lead to more volume. But broadly, it does not, and has not in almost every chance, in every hype piece and off-season sleeper that has been hyped through that reason, just hasn't paid off. It's still a Kadarius Toney thing, I think, right now, and it's why I find myself on the opposite side of that. Not that there isn't potential, so there is some value there. On most of those trade questions, if you will. But anyway, too long, didn't read. Zach's got to go in like 2 minutes now. I took 5 of his last 7 minutes. James.
Go. Michael Carter being a handcuff for Breece Hall is not
matter.
Yeah, it's actually a negative, even though you in your mind, even though in your mind you're like, oh, I want to get the handcuff. You don't handcuff other people's players. Don't handcuff your own running back. Don't.
As I talk with John this way, you can play that way. It's nice to have what you think of as peace of mind, but straight up, it's actually worse.
Yeah, in terms of expected value. Yeah.
But I mean, you're playing. You got to enjoy playing. If it provides you that much, maybe it pays you back in a different kind of value. But I wouldn't value it particularly. Zach's right here. You can definitely mitigate efficiency with volume.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Najee Harris. Okay, Najee Harris is just good. There you go.
I heard he's bad. I've heard he's bad, Peter.
James keeps saying keep Tyler St. Brown. I agree with you, Angie. And then they just got bored waiting for me to finish talking and started answering each other. So that was helpful, actually, guys. I appreciate it. Let me see. Teas take time to develop. Yes, but no. I'll get back to that.
He had a 1,000-yard season as a rookie. Like, he's not bad.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about Pitts. Again, if and when he is, the fantasy darling again, you'll look back and be like, this guy was never bad. Why was I questioned? But we don't know the way reality goes, that team situation. Like, that's the problem. Scoring opportunities, because he has actually been really good at what he does in the NFL. It's Evan Ingram, but they haven't lost faith, basically. And he actually did better than Evan Ingram through the first 2 years, but don't tell John Bosch I did that. But yeah. 12-team Superflex 1.5 tight end premium, 10 to 12 bench, 4 taxi. I won't list my whole roster. Appreciate that. But these are the players he has, if you want to look through them. Puff pass kick. Welcome back, by the way. Not sure which direction I should go aside from running back. Would really like to strengthen wide receiver. Hollywood and Tony. Actually, I really love Hollywood, and Tony's got upside. It's fine. Should I go after Amari, Lockett, or shuffle some assets to go younger?
I think Amari Cooper would be a great way to go. And if I could package Tony with a pick or Tony and something else and get Cooper, I'm happy.
Yeah, and literally my article I put out every week looking at targets would be my best answer for which wide receivers I'm focusing on. But off the top of my head, your wide receivers actually look solid. I don't care so much about the depth because the top of your roster is so good. It's got Chase. You're good. Hollywood is a very nice floor with ceiling pick. Tony and Shahid, I keep saying his name, but they're both. Tony is just an upside bet, which is fine as well. In this roster construction, I'm not thinking what I need for my starting lineup, though. Jacobs and Madison are great running backs. Chase is a solid. You don't have enough value in your players here to be thinking lineups. You're still thinking, how do I increase my value? How do I increase my points per game? So you're just searching for good trades, which principally goes through the wide receiver position. So goes straight to your question, to be honest with you. But it's not because who I need to start. It's because your roster is not like in the situation we were just talking about, where I had 5 top 12 dynasty players. Then you can be like, okay, well, I need to set a plan for this season. You're not. I don't think this squad in a redraft league for sure you're set. This would be a great redraft team, but in dynasty, you could. I don't think you're in a position where you need to play all it. What do I need to do for this season? You're still playing more broadly. But Zach's about to explain exactly why I'm wrong.
So no. I'm just looking at this, and so in a start 10 league, I think this team is light. A 12-team Superflex start 10 league. Because if you look at, so you're going to start 2 of those quarterbacks. Jacobs, you're hoping Madison is the starter for the year. So there's 4. Chase and Hollywood Brown, there's 5, 6. I'm not confident in Tony. I'm not confident in Shahid. I'm not confident in any of your tight ends. So you got
It's not enough to really be like, I need to think about my starting lineup.
Yeah. So you're at a point here where add value. And
okay,
yeah,
I'm happy to hear I'm not completely wrong for it.
Nope.
No, that's where I'm at. Like your starting line was not. It's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make you think you shouldn't like your team. It's a pretty good team. I'd be really happy going into the season with this team, but it's not thick enough. I'm thinking, who do I start where? I'm not focused on my starting lineup in a dynasty league with this roster just yet. It's good, but we're not quite there. We're still thinking value. We're still thinking the best trades to add more value. But man, the season's wild. You might just find that's the best team in the world. Who knows? Brandon L, you two should just play redraft then. I mean, I do a little bit, but not much. They're talking to each other. Okay. I play best ball redraft on Underdog, and okay, they're still in that discussion. London and Watson or Lance and Judy?
That's Love and Watson.
Love and Watson. Sorry. Love and Watson or Lance and Judy?
Wait. So is this Christian Watson or Deshaun Watson? Because that makes a big difference. If it's Christian Watson, it's Jerry Jeudy. Period.
I think it's Lance and Judy.
I don't even want Lance. I don't like Lance's whatever, but
I think that's what he's asking. Like which team scores more points if you have Love and Watson or Lance and Judy?
Jerry Jeudy.
I think I take the Lance and Judy side as well.
Yeah.
I could answer that, but I'm not right now. Love and Watson for me. Here we go. See, we take too long and they just get into more interesting discussions by themselves. Watson's a really interesting debate, but I just don't have space in my head for having that one right now. Right, Pete, I don't like drafting.
I got to go to bed. Chat, it's been great. We'll catch you next week. I got to be up early, though. So I look over there. Oh, wait, I'm gone.
See you in a bit. See you. Okay, I'm going to try and finish it as best I can. It's my fault we started late, so it's only fair that I pay this. I don't like drafting near someone in an upcoming draft I have. How do I psychologically wear them out? In a draft, it's difficult. In season, I like to not start my roster until the very last minute. I find that a very effective psychological warfare tactic. In a draft, leave it to the last minute on the clock, yet constantly be active online and very non-responsive in the draft DM. I find that really upsets people. Yeah. Brandon L. Okay, I'm in the middle of your guys' discussion right now. I'm just going to have to move on because I don't think I'm going to be able to catch up. DK and Diggs or Jamar Chase? Really good question. I think either team is happy. This is the same position trades suck. If I'm forced to choose, I just take Chase. I think he's going to be higher drafted than both of them this time next year, and that matters more because there's just exponentially more value in the first 5 picks than even the first 24. And competing, Diggs, DK, Repo, you're answering the question. I'm loaded at wide receiver. Okay. You sure are. Drake London. It's this actually word that scares me, Genji. Like, there is no question Drake London had a really good rookie season. There's no question that Christian Watson had a really good rookie season. It's just we kind of have to choose our darlings. Not what was I looking for the crosswords this week? And 70% of breakouts, second year, third year, whenever, as a random single line, about 70% of breakouts have an indicator in common. In other words, they have over a certain value of a baseline or over a certain points per game or over a certain target share. Like 70% of the breakouts usually fit that category if it's a fairly good line, fairly good category, and the sample size is fairly judged, right? But only about 36 to 37% with that positive indicator turn out to be those 70% of breakouts. So in other words, while 70% of all breakouts have something in common, there are exponentially more players on a year-to-year basis or over time doing that thing that then don't go on to break out. It's like the lie in hit rates. Like 70% have this thing in common. Sure. But instead of just being 10 players over a 5-year period, it's actually like 100 players that cross that line, and you have to choose your darlings. Drake London had an exponentially good season compared to an average wide receiver, even with his draft capital. So did Christian Watson. It should not be taken for hate for that reason, because you've got to recognize, like, a lot of players don't do that. They prove themselves to be fairly good. But from there, we have to choose our darlings, because you only have so much value, so much roster space, and so many things you can do in a league, especially when you want to successfully navigate a dynasty space that's fairly competitive. So the actually doesn't belong. Drake London was good in his rookie season. There's really no question about it. The questions come in when you compare that situation, when you compare how he made his numbers to someone like Olave or Wilson, which everyone has him ranked below, which is fine and fair. But that's where the questions come in. And for me, I prefer London over Watson because I have more questions on Watson because his situation also became worse. However you want to measure or value that, it can be part of the argument, but I don't think we have a clear way of deciding whether losing Aaron Rodgers or having Ritter is versus Love is somehow worse. I don't think we have clear answers to that. But what we can say is that Watson has a high touchdown rate, which tends to be a red flag, even on good wide receivers. It doesn't make them bad. I don't know how Kevin Benjamin's career would have played out if he didn't get traded himself, and that might just be reality. Chase Claypool is another one. And not every negative good rookie season has bad touchdown rates on them, like Christian Watson, but it is something more of them have in common. Because a lot of that category, those who have good rookie seasons, those what would be 74% that have the indicator, but then don't go on to break out ever, or at least not in year two, and don't have a lot in common. They come from different draft rounds, have different levels of target share. Some are 8, some are Chris Godwin, some are Devontae Adams breaking out in year 4 and being phenomenal for after that, and some are Chase Claypool and Kelvin Benjamin. So the one thing I know I can go looking for is be a little bit sussy, a little bit less sure about wide receivers that depended a little too much on touchdowns. Doesn't mean he's bad, because there aren't great clear indicators for that. That's why we normally just talk about the 70% rate. But at some point, you have to choose your darlings. And I know you're not, I don't know what your opinion was in Watson or London here, but that actually word, that feeds into a lot of what I'm trying to write up for the Crossroads this week. I think we miss that part. It's not about whether they were good or bad. We can make very definite conclusions about who was good and who was bad, I think fairly reasonably. But after that, a lot of nuance comes in, and it comes a point where you can't really even blame players for not succeeding. Again, Kevin Benjamin feels like a hit for me at some point because I didn't think it would continue. But he got traded, and the stuff that happened with Cam Newton in the last year he was with the Panthers, like, his career could have played out a lot differently. I don't actually know the future, and Kelvin Benjamin was a talented human being, so is Chase Claypool. I bet on these trends, but the reality of it is these are individuals who can make anything happen. And not to mention an individual year can bring up any circumstance because, weather or getting in the zone or all those things that we can't actually predict about the future that I don't actually know I was right. But so I try to come out with definites and absolutes, but at the same time, recognize how I'm getting there. There are flaws there. You have to accept there are flaws to the fact that we don't know way things are going to play out. And so that actually is literally the only part that bothers me a lot about this sophomore debate that we have this time of year, because I think we know who did well and who did bad. Treylon Burks did bad this year. And so to like him still a little bit, although I haven't managed to trade into a lot of him, but here or there, is by digging into some of those less certain waters. There aren't clear indicators. You're kind of putting together a package of statistics and hit rates and trends, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for not knowing it. Like, this doesn't always happen, which is for someone like me who plays more with what happens most often. That's why I talk the way I do about these things, because I want to let in that uncertainty. I think Treylon Burks can be excused from a bad rookie season, but it's not actually a question whether he had bad rookie season. I think Drake London can be a little overvalued right now because, again, a similar package of thoughts and stats and trends, but I definitely want to let in that nuance of he did have a good rookie season, most assuredly, and so did Watson. And from there on, we're dealing with much murkier waters. It's much fairer to stand on those hills because it could definitely happen. Anyway, sorry, I'm going on about that random comment way too much. Super Cooper was just able to do a 3-way trade. Nice. I've rarely ever gotten those done, especially where I'm a weak trader. I always get lost in who's getting what. Move Levis for some thirds and a second for Tua. I think that's solid. Really solid trade. Other two teams gave up more to each other. I was just able to benefit from having Levis to go with Tannehill. That was the real deal. Yeah, backing, you got them to value the fact they were getting the backup, which is also, it's just a way of selling hopes and dreams, you know. Levis is a solid value where he is, but and definitely has potential, like we were just talking about, and don't know the future. But yeah, that's just a walk-off win. Appreciate it. Appreciate you letting me in on it. Flosaurus, he walked onto a boat, said I couldn't buy you and the boat, bopped the dude and walked away. Oh, said he could buy you and the boat, bopped the dude and walked away. It's nice to know money doesn't change you, you know? Yeah, I don't know anything about this incident, but it sounds horrible. Alave is Diggs. No. No. I think you can make a Alave Michael Thomas comparison. And maybe he is, but Diggs is just one of those players. And it's not all just about how good he is as a player. Like, I loved his college profile. I loved that he was underdrafted in the NFL, so I got to take advantage of that in rookie drafts. And then afterwards, people not believing it. It's a lot of personal bias, you know, that my experience with having to see Diggs be great. And Olave has been wonderful so far. Again, it's one of the two rookies, like, just grandfather on man. 75 points and above over baseline in your rookie year. About as a solid indicator as you could get. Diggs was around there, I think. I mean, the players that do better than that in their rookie year are like Jamar Chase. It's Justin Jefferson. It's Odell Beckham. There was very little up from what Olave managed to do fantasy-wise in his rookie season. It's pretty impressive. Also, which side do you take? Tight end premium. Tyreek Hill and Mark Andrews. Side B got Goddard and St. Brown. Huh. It's a good question. I think I lean on Ross St. Brown. I think he's a little undervalued in that tier right now. I think if that's Waddle or that's AJ Brown or that's CeeDee Lamb, even, I think fewer people will even consider that. So I think you're getting a deal on Brown. Goddard's one of those tight ends in the middle class. Again, Zach, you just heard what Zach thinks of tight ends. I kind of like the middle class of tight ends. I like taking advantage of it, especially in Dynasty where the waiver wire is weaker. It's a little harder to stream, although definitely very viable in play your league. And Goddard's really solid. Like, he's TJ Hawkinson, but he doesn't have this off-season bump that Hawkinson has got. So I love getting Goddard. He's definitely not Mark Andrews. That's a different tier at tight end. But I'd rather have St. Brown and Tyreek are in a similar tier of production expectation for me. And St. Brown's got oodles of value in years left, whereas Tyreek doesn't. So I lean that way. But honestly, it's kind of just a good trade to even. Well, it's a bad trade in that one team's going to win, and one team's going to lose because it's the same position trade, actually. But I'll choose my darlings, and I'll take St. Brown in that one. But choosing Mark Andrews instead is also a good way to go. Give me volume. I would love to. Way easier to figure out. And yet very difficult. That's the other part. Again, that's that trick, like with the hit rate things, like only 36, 37% of actually have that indicator actually do it. Yeah, volume's easier to figure out relatively. Efficiency is literally unfigurable. I have never seen an efficiency stat that's sticky or predictive in any way. But the other thing I was going to say, but I was trying to get out of it before Zach came, there are some players on efficiency versus volume arguments that clearly that's part of their game. And at a certain point, you can just expect that. I think that's sometimes overlooked. Like Deshaun Jackson, you knew he was going to get 20% of target share, but while he wasn't getting 25 on 26, it didn't matter because you knew he was going to be efficient on that. So you had a reasonable expectation with efficiency building. Davante Adams, especially since we've seen a year without Aaron Rodgers, who always elevates touchdown efficiency for his receivers, tight ends or wide receivers, it doesn't matter. But Davante Adams himself doing it in New York without that seems to be part of his game. Now, again, someone watching the tape or more familiar with a different process might say, well, yes, obviously he has this particular skill. I don't know that until I see that trend in their efficiency. Some players are effectively more efficient at certain things, and that becomes their medium. So they're not being overly efficient to be efficient compared to an average wide receiver, in other words. Frankly, Rob Gronkowski, if you want to go for the historical example, there was just no reason to ever expect a reasonable touchdown efficiency from Rob Gronkowski. He was just always going to outpace the field. And I think, speaking of Adam Harstad, as we often do, I think he said it was only his final career year which finally brought him into the range of touchdown efficiency for tight ends, because the rest of his career, he just played outside of it. He was just way too efficient technically based on the tight end position. So efficiency can be a feature of some players' games, and that's another interesting nuance of it. Brian, thank you so much. Great answers. I know I was still awake when you got to my question. Thank you, Brian. Sorry we take so long. I do go on. Thanks for the question. Flosaurus, unless it's Dalvin and Madison, I'm definitely losing the plot here. Yeah, okay. I can't say words. Leave me alone. Lance, how much do you believe in Olave remaining in the top 10 of Dynasty wide receiver long term? That's a nuanced and good question. Is it worth using him to pivot to Lamb and Waddle now while the perceived value is strong? Good question. I haven't checked. I think Olave is now finally in the top 10 in DLF ADP. And I think last time I checked, he was slightly below them. Rankers were putting him in that tier to try and get an edge on the market because he probably should be value-wise. But, they're a little more proven. They've done it a little longer. In terms of staying in the top 10, I think you can have relative confidence. Again, it's not a Chase. It's not a Waddle. It's not a Justin Jefferson first season. But there are very few players, like that's a very high bar to set if that's the only top 10 Dynasty wide receiver you're going to put in there. Wilson and Olave both hit a mark where I can't think of any hits or any misses from that point on, although it doesn't mean it's impossible. And because he's young, and especially with Olave, where he was doing it mostly with volume, so you don't have to worry as much about scoring opportunities. Probably still going to be able to get that. Even with MT's return, they probably just help each other by moving the ball more often by both being good. If MT returns, I think you can have pretty good confidence that he's going to be in the top 10, at least in Dynasty. In top 10 in scoring, again, there's variance year to year on the actual points side. That's why we tend to lean volume, because reality sucks, but we do know the things that we like. And Juju Smith-Schuster, my eternal fail, after he broke out into the top 12 in year 2, not the mark we're talking about with Olave, but he disappointed in year 3, and he's disappointed a lot of people ever since then. But my argument for him in year 4, after that disappointing year 3, was there'd still be windows, because he's always going to have that top 12 at a young age, and he's relatively young for the position to be in his third career year. And so far, that's remained true. You can always kind of get out with finding a trade to get a first if you need to. And Olave's downside is that, not the exact career trajectory of Juju Smith-Schuster, because 1, Olave's never been in the top 12, and 2, he's entering year 2, not year 3, with a potential letdown. but I think he'll remain in the top 10 in Dynasty for at least a year, even with the most disappointing season. Like he plays every game and somehow forgot to play football. He has a Elijah Moore season, for example. I don't think his value entirely fades away. The floor is really solid. He might not remain in the top 10, but he'll remain he'll trade in that category because we like to trade for those guys that are falling because of performance, because we believe we can game the system. But again, some of that goes to your league. You know that your league will be like, oh no, that was just a rookie, whatever. We don't like wide receivers anyway. Then he is more likely to lose. The risk of him losing that value is a little more severe. But I think in most leagues, even the worst season I can imagine from Olave isn't going to drop him out that drastically in dynasty value. And so I think you can have a lot of confidence that Olave is going to be relatively similar. And you've also got the upside to consider. He could just do what he did last year again and maybe expand a little bit, because there is room to expand, not in terms of volume, at least in terms of scoring opportunities. If the team gets slightly better, like I mentioned with MT. And then he's not just in the top 10, like he's the shiny thing in the top 10, which is why rankers are putting him a little ahead of even where ADP has him right now. So, yeah, I have pretty good confidence in Olave and both Wilson in that range. But to your question here, there's obviously risk, and it's nice having a Lamb or a Waddle who's seen do it. Well, you've seen Waddle do it every year, and Lamb you finally saw break out into the top 12 without Amari Cooper. A year 3 breakout, and you can follow on from there. That's why I'm actually a little weaker on Lamb now, because I liked him a lot, because I figured he looked like one of the best top 12 breakout candidates in the third year that I've ever seen. Like, he was picturesque for that role. But the other thing is, like, third-year breakouts are a little less shiny after that than second and first-year breakouts. So that's not a strict law, but it's a rough rule I like to apply. Like, I prefer the Chases and the Justin Jeffersons to the Chris Godwins and to, who are we talking about? CD Lambs. It's not that they're not good and I don't have a really high dynasty value on them, but I'm a little more skittish when I compare them to those earlier breakouts. And again, it's not like breaking out in your third year means you're somehow a worse player. CD Lamb's very good. I have a very high dynasty value on him. But if you're going to in that tier, finding a tiebreaker, it's the guys who just didn't quite take that extra year. Not that means much about him as a person or a player, to be fair. But again, where I just play the history, man, that's where I'm at. How did I get into CD Lamb? Oh, you mentioned him. That's why. And Waddle's just really strong because he's that 2, like Zach's been talking about, that 2 tends to have a discount because he's not the one on his team, as if that matters. And 2, because he came out with Chase. So everyone remembers Chase doing it, and they forget Waddle was also in the top 12 that year. And last year it was all about Tyreek Hill, even though we saw Waddle do it again. Like, it's just, there's a lot of ways you get Waddle in that tier instead of the Chase Jefferson tier, basically because of context. So yeah, I would value Olave with or over Lamb, to be honest, but Waddle in that tier, I'd still lean Waddle. But Olave and Waddle are closer to me than Chase, than Waddle and Lamb. I think I've said everything, the same 4 things 5 times there, Lance. Sorry, but I kept thinking of different ways to frame it. James Martin, Kyler or Russell Wilson? Kyler, Russell Wilson, Tannehill, Breece Hall. That's a team. Any recommendations for this dynasty team is the question. He owns his own 24 first. Okay, James. Well, you're not weak at quarterback because you're so deep at quarterback. But that stands out to me as the question position on your roster. Tannehill, probably, just guessing, doesn't have a clear starter position by the end of the season. We don't know where he's starting by next year. Probably work his way out. He finds a job like Jimmy G probably has. But by the end of the season, he's not a certain starter. And Russell Wilson, I'm hoping, and I think he can bounce back this year, back to more of what we saw before him. But, I mean, that's up in the air. Kyler Murray, I don't like to do the injury discussion. He's probably going to play more than people think, but less than you probably like to be your starting QB1. So the questions for me I've got here for your team looking at 2023 is the quarterback position. So that's where I'm looking. And where it's sick, you've got 3. I'm wondering if you can go and get Herbert. Since there's a value opportunity on him, I think he should be a neck and neck with Mahomes and Allen, which he is kind of. It's a tier, but Mahomes and Allen are separated. And then you've got Burrow, Herbert, and probably Kyler still in that tier, and Lamar Jackson. But Herbert had a disappointing season last year. And there's just a lot less excitement on Herbert. I find in my leagues and when I look over ADP than some of those others in that category. So what do I need to do to get Herbert on this roster? I prefer to keep Kyler, but could I add that first to Tannehill and get Herbert? Probably not. That's probably not enough. Herbert's probably too high. You're either trading Kyler in that first for Herbert, which gives you the same level of starting quarterback, but you don't have that question anymore heading into 2023. And where he's a young quarterback, I don't have much value concerns there. Although you are bleeding along for 23 competition, which is fine. Or what else am I looking at on this roster? And wide receivers are set. You're good. Tight end's fine. No, it's really just a quarterback. I go looking for values on quarterback. I'm looking for a way of tearing up without giving up too much. I try and keep Kyler. Is there any way I can package up Russell Wilson and Tannehill into... Oh, there's a thought. Daniel Jones is undervalued, so is Geno Smith for this season. And they probably have more likely to have a job next year than Tannehill, or we're more likely to know they have a job next year by the end of the season than Tannehill. So what can I do with Tannehill to get either Geno Smith or Daniel Jones? That makes you more competitive this year. Doesn't solve your long time. It's about value points for this year, and that's where my head's on this roster. It's a very competitive roster. Don't really feel you need to chase extra value, so you're not trading things off for more value. But I try and solidify that quarterback position. And then hopefully you find out that like Kyler Murray is actually going to play a lot more than we thought, and Russell Wilson does back. I can't... Yeah. That's the only direction I can think go. And I got to say, I don't think you get a lot moving. I'm not sure the Geno Smith owner or the Daniel Jones owner is very excited about getting Tannehill plus first, which you really don't want to give up anyway, or Tannehill plus whatever depth you have that I can't see. But I would try that, and otherwise you're pretty set. You're holding for the season. You're looking for other value opportunities. Peace out, Flosaurus. Olave, yeah, he's easily top 10 in Dynasty, and like I say, I have pretty high confidence he's going to remain that way, but there's a range of outcomes. 7% of hits have X, but lots of X don't hit. That was... I always forget to do that calculation, so I was doing it recently for the Crossroads. We forget, like... I think it's a really interesting point to point out. Like, a lot of players end up with those positive signals. And that was specifically using value over baseline, by the way, but the good indicators tend to have reasonably similar. Like rookie to sophomore breakouts, the percentages are closer to like 66% have that indicator and the rest don't. And after that second year breakouts, like players that break out in year 3 and 4 and 5, indicators tend to shore up to 70% or a little over that. Like, for example, another random one is like players who break out into a top 12 season, 70% of them have finished inside the top 36 before they break out by year 3 or year 4 or year 5. And it tends to remain pretty consistent till you get towards the end, and then it goes up a lot. And towards the beginning, it's slightly lower. But beyond those hit rate categories, how many players are actually crossing those thresholds that we're having to choose between, I think is sometimes undervalued. And that's the other thing I come across with these sophomore discussions. It's like, he had such a great rookie season. It's like, yeah, but that in itself isn't enough reason to value him over the guy, even though this is why I keep getting in the weeds with my Crossroads script this week, because there's two different directions I have to go here. Players who have a more disappointing rookie season than, say, Wilson or Olave, so they're 40 points over baseline, for example, instead of 75, they could easily be the best wide receiver of this class. Christian Watson, Treylon Burks, like that's still in their range of outcomes, but it's now less likely. Whereas with Wilson and Olave, like we were just talking about, you have more certainty that their range of outcomes is tighter and higher. But the range of outcomes is still pretty high, or the height of it is still just as high for Burks and Olave, because you do have Chris Godwins and you do have Devontae Adams. Demaryius Thomas is another good one. In the rookie season, Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, the 2 first-round picks for this draft, from that draft. Dez Bryant had a really good rookie season with like, I can't remember, it's like 56% points over baseline, or you could use points per game or target share. That's just the number I was using to reference it. So he was a clean hit, and he continued to be Des Bryant, so that's pretty good. Demaryius Thomas, I would argue, had as good, if not better, season by the end, but he actually had negative points over baseline in his rookie year, which is one of those things that keeps that range of outcomes in those lower performers. So what it becomes a question of is you should definitely go in Des. DT, Demaryius Thomas, definitely has that in his range of outcomes, but it was slightly less likely because doing better means that range of outcomes tightens and the floor comes up, if you like. So if you're shooting for upside, it's fine to bet on all the underperformers, the players who didn't perform as well, but you're opening yourself up to a much larger player pool of misses and hits. And in Dynasty, where you're making the best decisions you can, I think it's false to say you should always bet on that guy because he's cheaper and it's still in his range of outcomes. Because that's just a way of consistently burning volume or burning value on less likely hits. And instead of taking small shots on high upside, what you're essentially doing is bleeding out all these small little bits of value, when instead you could use those to build in. You could add that second to a player and get a first. You can add that first to another player and get Trevor Lawrence. And so you're not just burning these little bits of third-round picks and second-round picks on the less likely players, who could be Demaryius Thomas, but are normally Christian Kirk, who took forever to break out. It was only last year. Or Leonta Carew, I spent way too many years betting on because he's cheap. But you lose all those opportunities, especially if you do that consistently, to bundle that value up to get much more certain things and build your team much more successfully in the majority of cases. Cheap so it doesn't matter is valid. I honestly think if you include that in part of a dynasty, which is a constant build, you're always building in dynasty technically. You're always trying to get better in points per game or value. You've got to manage that balance. You don't have to, but I think most are trying. Then I actually think it's a much worse negative outcome than it suggests. Like Sky Moore for a third, who cares? Well, what else could you have done with that third? Maybe you drafted the running back who had those few games this year, and suddenly you've got, a lot of potential trades on the block. Or maybe you added that third to Aaron Jones, and you ended up getting a first off a team that was competitive this year. Could Sky Moore hit, and therefore that was a better direction? Sure. But this way was sure and steady, if you like, the tortoise, just slowly growing value. And this way is trying to win everything on a single bet. It's putting your paycheck, even though it's actually only a third-round pick. Over time, if you're constantly doing that, all you're doing is constantly bleeding these small pieces of value, and your value just dries up. And because it rarely happens, we rarely get that right because the indicators are very shallow and honestly not strong, then I think on average, you should believe that you're more often just going to end up with no value and in a rebuild. But the thing is, you're rebuilding with only the players that you have left that you happen to have that have value because you spent all of it or a lot of it burning on these less likely shots. So those little bits of value add up. I don't know. You see why I keep getting in the Crossroads episode has taken me 2 weeks to write, and it's still in this note version because I can't quite frame it right. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that. I just need to keep thinking about it till I get it right. How much draft capital would you trade for AJ Brown? AJ Brown's a team situation pick right now. He's in that tier with Waddle and CeeDee Lamb, and he should be valued there. He should be valued at 3 first-round picks as the generic valuation of that kind of good wide receiver, that good of a wide receiver. But he's old enough where you can start to ask yourself questions like, am I in that window? Because if your team is a lot terrible, it's better to trade AJ Brown away, and it's okay to take a discount to get out now because there's risk in a player waiting for the player to play the season if your team is definitely not competitive or less likely to be competitive. As a generic answer, 3 first-round picks, but there are a lot of trades I would take in a lot of team situations where I get 2 first-round picks. And I don't know, you throw in one of those running backs, Herbert or Roschon Johnson or an ambiguous backfield guy, because I think I might be able to trade him for something in season, and I'm moving my value. And I like to say, especially when I'm trying to do that with a roster, I want to stay active. More transactions is actually better because transactions lead to transactions. Trades leads to trades. It it keeps the league moving and paying attention. All those small little ancillary things. So I might take less value in that in an AJ Brown compared to a Waddle or a Olave or anyone else, just to keep the transactions moving on a team where I'm building. But that's a really particular circumstance. Like 9 out of 10 leagues, even if I'm just middle of the pack, I'm very happy rostering AJ Brown. It's going to take something that equals 3 first-round picks, like that juicy, because, as much as we say wide receivers are deep, wide receivers with that upside, AJ Brown upside, I mean, there's only top 12 wide receivers every year, and he's one of the ones who consistently has that upside. It's a great player. Is there any hope for Trey Lance? Yes, I actually think during the rookie season, that was one of my... If I have the Richardson pick, if he falls to me where I would want to draft him in a rookie draft, one of my ideas was I'd go try and get Trey Lance, who's not the same bet because he's a little further in. There's a different player, a lot of other context around him, but he has the same level of upside if we're just talking about the potential of running and maybe passing well. So my question was, what else would the Trey Lance owner give me to get Anthony Richardson? Because to me, they're very similar bets, because the bet at this point isn't, are they good? I think they're phenomenal to be drafted, let alone drafted where they were. And they must be in terms of people and players and capacity. But the ability to construct that level of production, that ability in the NFL is just really difficult. It must be, because we've seen a lot of players try it and a lot of players struggle to produce there, even if they're good. Geno Smith has taken this long to find the right skill, the right fit, and the coaching staff to really go in on him and build around his skill set and work with his skill set. So we've got a lot of those false signals as well. And Lamar Jackson's and Jalen Hurts, like these guys put it together, so it's possible. But a lot have tried, and it's not like they didn't have talent. It's not like Richardson doesn't have talent or Lance doesn't have talent, but that's the bet to me. And like Zach likes to say sometimes, they're points bets at this point, both of them. And both of them are trying to accomplish something similar, although I'm sure they're very different players. And everyone will talk to me about the difference between the San Francisco 49ers offense versus their offense. I'm just a historian, but that seems to be the bet to me. So if there's a significant difference between Lance and Richardson, I like Lance. As far as hope for Lance, yeah. I mean, he doesn't even have to start the season for him not to finish the season as a player. And we really haven't seen him enough in the NFL trying to do that difficult thing to know if he can or can't. The team is going to try their best, but it's not like they get it right or wrong. Sam Darnold, if they choose Sam Darnold, then that's a motivational tactic. Or there's no hope, maybe, but there's no point in just dropping him for free. I'm just kind of blathering because it's quarterback. But yeah, I think there's a lot of hope. I don't think we know any more than we did after he started those few games of his rookie season. There's just a lot more questions. And we've seen no other information. Brock Purdy is definitely proficient. He's definitely able to step in and do that job. And maybe the team just leans that way. And because they can do a lot with the Jimmy Graham, as we've seen. But that's a very different question. That's about team management and how they want to run their roster. And I'm definitely not the guy to decide that for them or to guess which way they're going to go. But there's a lot of hope because, again, it's the same hope as Anthony Richardson. He's within his range of outcomes. We had no information that suggests he's any less likely to be able to do it. In fact, I would say those small sample of games through the end of his rookie season were a remarkably positive signal that he can do something in the NFL. And if they want upside, although Purdy's perfectly fine, as we saw last year, and they might just want to ride out that direction, then they'll try it. If not to start the season, then to end the season, and we'll get a chance to get more information about whether he can or not. There's a lot of hope in that. How much hope? I wouldn't trade 2 first-round picks for it, but I'd trade Anthony Richardson for Lance and a first. I'd trade a first if I really just want to take that bet on the upside in my team situation. A first for Lance would be a great deal, I think. It's a really unique situation. No PPR 12-team start. Superflex start 9. Akers and Amon-Ra or CMC and Chark. I'm trying to remove my Chark bias here. Yeah, it's just Akers. Oh, shit. CMC versus Amon-Ra. 12-team Superflex. This is normally where I ask Zach to go first because I need to think about it a while. it's CMC, or it would be the Amon-Ra side, and I wouldn't think about it too long. But CMC is one of those running backs, man. Like, I'm not going to fade him for age. Talking to you about your team, Spock498, and welcome back, by the way. It's nice to see familiar faces all the time. Really is. It's like I know you. Yeah, it's Amon-Ra in a vacuum. Telling someone to do something with their team, I'd say Amon-Ra side wins. Wide receiver, value arcs, all that blathery nonsense you already know about. Not gonna say I'm angry with you if you just want CMC. Like he's one of those dudes, you know, especially in terms of fantasy and his upside. So you could argue team situation, but I'm not. I'm going to say the dynasty answer is Amon-Ra, the 23-year-old wide receiver whose range of outcomes in terms of what he's done to this point in his career is basically just green lights. It's just good players. Again, doesn't mean that's, you know, his range of outcomes always includes 0, as it does for Patrick Mahomes, which is obviously incredibly unlikely. If we're talking probability, his range of outcomes is, you know, just green lights. It's a great player. It's the ones you want on your team often and early in Dynasty or in redraft, to be honest. And because he's wide receiver and the value works the way it does in Dynasty, that's the answer. But CMC is one of those dudes, so it's even enough. But Akers is fine, Chark is fine, so I kind of null that out. And I just take the young, good wide receiver in a vacuum. Not going to tell you I wouldn't take CMC on some days when I'm feeling just wild. Lance, additionally, what's your opinion on I just talked about it for way too long, so hopefully you got some answer to that. Is there a reasonable buy window? I honestly think there is. Like, I don't think there's Kyle Pitts and Trey Lance. Like, I did not see a reason to buy into them until now. And now their value's in a really interesting range. There's risk, there's reward. The value isn't already at peak dynasty value. So, yeah, there's definitely a window. Your team situation, the value you have to spend on that level of upside is really where the question's at. Like, if you're just building, your team sucks, I think the value's a little too high to speculate in. If they do it, I can trade them for more. But if you're a solid team who's building, I think there's a really reasonable case that their value right now is worth their upside for a team that's good, but not quite, you know, the bull of the woods, as Zach would say, but also isn't completely dead. I think where I get shady about that level of risk is where I'm just building. Like, my team's terrible. I'm trying to get the 101 this year by my record. And then I'm not interested in that level of risk. But that leaves the majority of teams that should probably be interested in that level of upside. But then it comes down to, do you have that value to spend on it? Because it's not clearly good enough that every team in that middling top to bottom situation, or not the bottom and not the absolute top, should be interested. Like, if they were a little lower, I'd say, like, there's just almost no dynasty situation that you shouldn't try to trade for them. If they're worth 1 first plus a player, all in. But where they are right now, it takes a little bit more of the scale balancing. You know, if I'm a competitive team but not a Ball of the Woods team, I want to take that shot, but I want to see the trade before I'd say yes. Like, how close can I get it to, for Trey Lance, a first and Anthony Richardson? Yeah, I'm taking that shot. So I get the first back with Trey Lance. How close is Kyle Pitts to Dallas Goedert and a second? Dallas Goedert and the first. Why not? We'll go all in. If I can get it close to that in a team that's fairly competitive, yeah, I want in on that upside. But it's not a clear enough window. I'm just going to say every team should definitely go try that, even though the upside's definitely there, because the risk still needs a little bit of managing where their ADP is. That's my best guess. In your league, you might find the values drastically different than the random ADP I'm looking at. No problem, Lance. Thanks for chatting with me on a random Thursday night. Thursday? Yeah. By Treylon, I really like the idea of it, but actually that fits into just what I was saying about Pitts and Lance. Like, I like his value right now, but it's not good enough that I'm just bulldozing towards him on every team. Like, if it was a random first, which is probably where it's at right now, but it's a little higher than that. It's like a first plus, you know? if there's a little less, there'd be hardly a team I wouldn't be in on it. But there's significant risk. Again, like I was just babbling on about underperformers in the rookie season. He could be Demaryius Thomas. But the risk is now more players who do that in the rookie season, despite the context I've come up with to justify it, the less than 70% snaps over a certain amount of, just didn't play enough. He's a missed time potential, like Rondo Moore was last year, mixed results there. But that's the thing, it's a mixed results category. If you're going to take those bets, you got to be in a position and paying a value that it's okay for your dynasty squad and your situation that it can just be a loss. Like, after next year, he's a points proposition. If he doesn't prove what I think is true, that he's actually better than what he did last year, even in that situation, this can't excuse it for situation, then the upside from that point becomes, well, we waited on Christian Kirk till 2022, so see you in 5 years. Like, that's you have to mitigate that risk in the trade. If it was a little lower, like it was easy to trade him for a first, or you could get him for a player that was worth a first to someone else, but not you necessarily, then yeah, sure, yeah, let's go. In almost all situations. But the few times where I've managed to trade him, I might trade him like Tony and a late first, or Tony in a second, because of that upside of Tony. I'm trading away those hopes and dreams for my hopes and dreams, essentially. And then it's possible, but I don't think a lot. I mean, they just drafted him, right? They also have hopes. They also follow me, and so know that he's probably better than his number show, or actually someone important, and have told them the same thing. So I think it's a little hard to get that easy value, but where I can, yeah. I'm talking way too long tonight. Bye, Trey Lance. Thanks, Genji. Yeah, thanks for taking care of that while I was here. Peter, are you gonna play in FFXVI Fantasy Football 16? Is that? It's really late. I don't know what is that the game. I don't play many video games anymore at this point in my youth. I don't even play Fortnite anymore because John Bosch won't play with me. It's mostly just chess. Olave is awesome. I really didn't get to watch a lot of football last year. I assume so from the way the points racked up. But again, you've heard my Olave take. Pretty comfortable with it. Drew, 12-team half-point PPR, no tight end, no premiums at all. Herbert, Watson, Bryce, and Lance, thick QBs and super flex. JT, Henry, CD, Olave, London, Burks, Dotson, Deontay. I like a lot of these guys. Pitts, Commit, Chig. I would trade Chig. You've got Pitts. I'd trade Commit if I could. I know they don't carry a lot of value, but those type of things I try and package up with because they're in a hype bubble, especially Chig right now. Again, just to move the ball along. Chig could definitely hit and like the Sky Moore thing, be the better side of it. But I want to slow and steady it. Anyway, 2 seconds and 24. Would you sell some pieces for future picks? It's a good question. Don't get me wrong here, Drew, but I think it's a dynasty content thing. I would buy for a second, I would sell for a first, and he's better in best ball. The generic answers work here. But in general, I don't think that way. You're always trying to increase in value. It's not necessarily selling for picks, but because you can find players that are more surer bets based on your ranks, or mine, or whoever's you prefer. There are a lot of ranks you should probably prefer, to be honest. So you should always be looking to do that. And like we've talked about with a few teams this year, what I'm looking for is a situation where I'm thick. I'm going to win this year. I'm going to try and win this year. It doesn't mean you trade all your value just for the running backs, but it does mean you want to set yourself up in a position to where in season I have these things to trade for the players that turn out to be the league winners that that end up on teams that aren't quite as competitive because they tried their best, but reality sucks. And that happens because of injury every year. And that's kind of the way I try to build my team ideally. I'm not going to say I successfully do it every year. So are you looking for future picks? Yes, always, constantly. In the same way, I'm always looking to trade running backs because of their typical value arcs. But if I've got Najee Harris right now, I'm probably not finding a trade I prefer. And if I have, let's look at your roster here. Dotson, for example, that's a good example. I want to trade away Dotson for future value, but his value right now is fair. It's not below, it's not above. So I'd like to trade for future picks for sure, or just add a second to him and try and tear up would actually be the move I tried to be the roster. But to finish my thought, but right now his value is fine. I mean, there's a lot of upside in Dotson. Ran all those routes. Pretty interesting team situation entering next year. There could be upside there. So I'm probably not selling for a second because that's probably about the trade you could find in most leagues. But to go back to the thought that actually occurred to me when I'm looking at it, he is low down enough where I'm like, can I add a second to Dotson to go get a first? I would be interested in that trade in this league because you're increasing your value for a good player in a second. I don't think I'm ripping that other team off. My team still remains pretty solid because I don't think in Dotson's upside, I'm starting him over CD or Olave. London's a different conversation. So, yeah, I can afford, quote unquote, to trade off a Dotson. But then it becomes, is any team in my league interested in that? Because they might not be. But I go looking for that type of trade. The other thing is London. He's probably just a hold for me because I'm not as active a trader as Dynasty Outhouse. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what Zach said. Like, I think there's a window here where London can still be good because he was last year. But in that situation, it just doesn't impress. And so there's a slight lag in his value. So in a vacuum, ideally, if I can trade away London plus a second, or just London straight up for 2 firsts and another player, or a running back that I really like because I'm switching position and making myself. There's a lot of different ways you can go depending on what your league's willing to give you. But in a vacuum, I'm probably not trading London. I'm not that good a trader. I'm not that active. My leagues know the moves I'm trying to make. So most of them are smarter than me. In your league, obviously, you're the smartest person, so you probably had to get more done. Pardon me. But that's the way I kind of think about your team presented to me. It's all these different directions I can go. London, well, there might be a dip. So what could I get that would remove that dip from my points per game, yet I'd still have value further down the line, maintaining points per game and value. But then when I think about my leagues, I realize that's probably not going to happen, so I'm probably just holding it. But then I look at Dotson, I'm like, I like Dotson a lot, but his value is fair. Yeah, I'll try and move him with a second for a first, like next year, or a first in 25 and a second in 2024. That'd be awesome. Just because, while I like Dotson, and I think there's a lot of upside there, I'm adding the certainty of that rookie pick growth in value because they get more valuable over time. Because until you make the pick, there's nowhere else for their value to go the closer we get to that draft pick. So that's the way I think about your roster. It's not necessarily just trading for future picks. Yes, but I mean, especially when you look at just your league, I mean, is there someone in your league wildly undervaluing someone? They're on the waiver wire. You really like Tony. I don't particularly, but maybe you do. And so you find that a value. And so that would be the guy instead of the future draft picks. I try and put it in this context because, yes, you're looking for picks because that's a generic idea of value in Dynasty. But I don't want to suggest to you that you just look for picks because there's a lot of sources of value. There's a lot of players that you would value having on your team. Maybe you're like me and you're just determined to be hurt once again by Rashad Bateman. He's a value move. Again, back to some other points that we made and one that Zach would point out. He's definitely a points proposition at this point, but I believe those points are coming, which means he's a value move to me. And if I get that wrong, that's fine as long as I make a trade at value, if you know what I mean. So Dotson and a second, or a second for Bateman, in my head is a value move. Again, if it does go wrong, then I'm going to reevaluate while I think that and try and do better next time. But don't try and think in absolutes, but to make decisions in life, but especially in fantasy football, you do have to come up with some system of trying to make safe, very few against the market, but still bets against the market to try and find value for yourself. It's okay to go and get Sky Moore for a third, by the way, despite my rant earlier and on Twitter. Like, that's a very viable trade. That's almost nothing. There's a lot of upside in that. But is that the best move you can make? I don't think so right now, because the odds of a Sky Moore season turning into a Demaryius Thomas season are relatively low for the future compared to the other moves that I've suggested, and you can try making Dynasty. Again, I'm very loquacious tonight. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on at you, Drew, but yes, you should continue to look for value. Those are some of the players that stand out to me on your roster. Like Deontay Johnson, just a stronghold. Pitt, stronghold. Commit, Chig, Dotson, potentially London, all look like players who, if in your league there are opportunities to do that, I'd be looking to add future value, well, maintaining my points per game with some other player coming back to me in some way. based on the players that you like. I suggested some of the ones I like, but don't underrate the ones that you like. Obviously, you won't, but I just want to make sure that I throw that in as often as possible because I really don't know the future. Local liability, 12-team, 1QB rebuilding team. Do we move DK and for what? I think DK is a hold right now. Again, explore opportunities. Obviously, what does that mean? Send trade offers. DK isn't someone I would think to send out as a trade offer right now because when I look at his ADP and I look at the recent trades, I prefer the DK side. But if you know your league and you know there's a guy in there who just actually appreciates how good DK Metcalf is because he's very good and he's a Seahawks fan or he always talks about his ads or whatever, then you can go, hey, I'm looking to move DK. What are you interested in trade? Or actually, the best move is to send a trade offer that you would be comfortable taking. Outside of that, I think DK is a strong hold. Like he belongs probably in that tier with Olave and AJ Brown, but he's a little lower right now because the situation's a little less certain, and they just added a rookie wide receiver. I think he's going to be fine. He's also young, like AJ Brown, young, and a pretty talented player. So I don't, based on his ADP and his recent trades, I don't see a great reason to start sending trade offers for your DK for something. And so he's a strong hold. Yeah, I can shorten that answer to there. You currently have the 108, the 109, and the 112. Not my picks. Again, that goes to what's possible. Because if you can trade for Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, do that. So if they are interested in DK for the 108, which is a very fair trade for Chase or Jefferson, yeah, I would tear up. Unless you're a pure building team, and then you go the complete opposite way. Can I get 2 first plus? Can I get 3 first for DK Metcalf? Team situation kind of determines a lot of the directions I'll try and move. But just in a vacuum, DK looks like a hold to me for most teams in most situations based on his ADP in the recent trades. So there's a lot of moves you can make there. And again, you're going to know your league better than I do. But I can throw out ideas and maybe we'll get lucky, you know? No problem, Lance. Seriously, I really appreciate you chatting with me. Genji, 1 QB for DK, probably like the 102, the 104. Oh, was I reading that question wrong? This is the other reason I need Zach. No, he's asking does he move his DK Metcalf for? Definitely don't trade him straight up for any pick like that. If you determine to trade DK, you can. But in the 2023 class in a 1 QB league, you need a top. You need the 101. I like JSN, I like Addison, but like DK Metcalf's shown some of what I think are their upside, you know? So if I'm trying to improve, then I want Bijan Robinson because I think he's going to be worth more. And that's really it. That's where that list ends for me. You could say a top 3 pick like Genji did if you're okay taking JSN or Addison, but there's a lot less certainty in JSN and Addison, despite the fact that I'm really high on both of them. As we have demonstrated, like straight up, just trading DK, trading a good wide receiver for a pick that you think is a good wide receiver. It's just a boat for a maybe a boat in my head. So instead, I either want to try and get to the 101, or I'm trying to do something else to get one of those top 3 picks in my rookie draft. Because DK is just worth more than that to me. Traylon Green and Christian Watson easily. Yeah, I mean, if I was doing a straight up trade, that's the way I would do it. Open 24 hours. Welcome back. Hey, Peter. Hello. Today I traded away Antonio Gibson and Michael Thomas to get Tony Pollard and Jaden Reed. 12 teams to flex PPR Dynasty. This is one of those questions where I'm going to hum and ha, but the real answer is I hate it, but you should probably like it. I'm not in on Pollard. Like, I don't buy that career arc. Not the player. His performance last year was great. Again, we can talk value over baseline if you like. I know he's good. Know he did great last year. But it's Lamar Miller arc that I'm worried about. He'll get all the touches this year. Okay. We sure that's good? Sure Zeke's done. Sure it's not more of a split. There are a lot of different game theory ways you can play it out where it's less good to value him where he's going. As for the value you gave for him, though, that's solid. I'm not in on totally Pollard, but emptying Gibson for Pollard straight up is fine, and having a Reed thrown in, pretty good. And the only reason I'm saying I don't like it is because, again, I'm a little lower on Pollard. I really like return wide receivers this year, and he's one of those guys who could return to the top 12, and that just deframe the world of this trade. You know, 9 times out of 10, this is a solid trade because this is a good move. You're adding Gibson to an all wide receiver and Aaron play last year to get a top 12 wide receiver and running back in Dynasty who was really good last year. Like, that's just a win. But I play a little weird. I get it. But, like, I want the old wide receiver in that trade. Even though this is too low for Tony Pollard, it's not a player I'm targeting. You should probably be really happy with it. I just wanted to mention that. But, yeah, it's a really solid value trade. But I think where I imagine 2023 is going to go trend-wise, like destabilize, like in an average year, Tony Pollard straight up win. But 2023 trends suggest that this is more likely the world will destabilize around this trade. Pollard struggles, Michael Thomas returns to the top 12, and you're left wondering why you have lower points per game and the most tradable asset is on the other guy's team. But that's a threading the needle take, which is why you got a good trade, don't get me wrong. But I try to thread the needle sometimes. And those return wide receivers and weird ass, just give them all the touches, running back breakout takes. Two of the things I try to fade, right or wrong. Peter, what do you think about Paris Campbell going forward? Same thing I've always thought about Paris Campbell. I actually think he's a lot more capable than I've ever said. He had a solid rookie profile, who had top 24 upside kind of a thing. Zach Reed loved him, and we agreed that I would just take the under to make it a more fun conversation. And I've continually been rewarded in that decision. And solid player, late career breakouts are more due this year for wide receivers rather than regular 1 year, 2 year, 3 breakouts. But Michael Pittman's never finished or crossed any of those signals we were talking about. Again, some players do that. Like 26 to 27% of breakouts don't cross those indicators, for example, as I'm writing up for the Crossroads. So, yeah, there's potential, but he's not the type of potential I go in for the same reason I'm not in on the Sky Moore. Oh, David Bell, a rookie profile I loved last year and overdrafted last year. I also am not in on buying David Bell low despite a bad rookie season because, again, I just play the history. The number of times that works out, it's a bleeding small amounts of value bet for me, and I try to build like the tortoise, as it were. And Paris Campbell to me is trying to play like the hare, and that's a very viable way of playing Dynasty. Just know where the dangers are, so you know what you have to do to your roster to sustain that level of buying Dynasty. But if you're constantly sending out these small amounts of value and these high upside shots, which Paris Campbell definitely is, like I think the few times he's touched the ball in the NFL, he's caught a touchdown. That constantly reminds me he's a capable player, and he can definitely do something like that. But he's not the type of player I would target in Dynasty. He's an all or nothing, small amount of value for a lot of upside, and that. Again, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, 999 times out of 1,000. It just turns out to be you just don't have the whatever value you traded for him, and no one's interested in him after he doesn't pay off. Mostly he's just a roster clogger at that point. Thanks for the great answer. I don't know if it's a great answer, but it is mine, and you're welcome to it, man. Seriously, anytime. Just here pontificating on Dynasty, Appreciate you listening. Genji, I'm going to bet Geno Smith regresses to being ass. Wow, that would suck. I'm rooting for him, not because I have a strong quarterback take, just because that was fun, man. A guy the league gave up on, getting to tell the league to go. I like that a lot. I root for players, mostly. I don't think so. I mean, he was good last year. I mean, relative to the offense they were running, it wasn't just the offense. It wasn't just that they lent on his strengths. Them leaning on his strengths is actually a good thing. I think they improved the receiving core, which was difficult to do, to be fair, considering the receiving core they had. Yeah, he definitely could. I mean, if I'm betting, definitely could. I have a strong indicator for it either way. A few Amon-Ra deals tonight. Yeah, a lot of Amon-Ra going around. I traded for him recently. I drafted Gibbs and then immediately traded him for Amon-Ra. And then everyone asked me if I wanted Jared Goff too, because I also drafted Sam Laporta. So, I have all the Lions at this point. And Pete, dig into Olave and make a video on it. Okay, that might be an interesting question. Yeah, I'm hoping to finish the Crossroad. I tend to use the research I do for the Crossroads to make the videos for that week, which is why my videos haven't released this week and the Crossroads hasn't, because I haven't finished the one to move on to the other. But Olave is definitely in that mix of the research. So I appreciate the pointer because honestly, I run out of ideas. Whoa, pause. What do I do? Oh, hey Shane, sorry for taking time. You gave someone $5. You should have my time. I have Jacobs and Barkley in Dynasty. Solid position to be in. The possibility of a holdout. Do you sell them low? No, not from running backs. You're betting on points. I get it. I do not know, nor do I think there is a good way for me to tell you what is more likely in a holdout situation. I just don't. Like, this is about individuals who are going to make decisions I don't know and are very different than all the other players who have made decisions in this arena. I don't think there's anything that can predict it. Let's be clear. So gut feelings aside, you just don't know. What you do probably know is Barkley's really young, man, relative to the position. And Jacobs is too. Like, Jacobs is underrated young. And underrated good. Like, last year wasn't the first time he's finished in the top 12. He's like 3 years straight in the top 12. He just had a phenomenally better year than he had the previous two. And all those touchdowns. So I think you keep rolling the dice. Maybe you get stuck with a holdout. And if so, I'm sorry that happened to you, man. That sucks. But, reality does suck sometimes. We've got to respect that these players have to make lives, and we're playing a silly little game based around it. Or I think we do. But here's the thing. The holdout ends eventually. He gets a job eventually. Even if it's not next year and you suffer the Le'Veon Bell curse, Barkley's young, not as far into his career as Bell was. And Bell played it in the way he chose to, and I support it. But I don't think that... it seemed to me a lot of bridge burning. And I don't think the reason he didn't come back to fantasy relevance was necessary. I think he was just pretty much done after all of that. It felt like done with football. But again, I don't know them or the situation. I don't think Barkley's there. I think eventually, in even the worst case scenario, and he doesn't play next year at all, which I don't think is going to happen really, then he will play eventually. So you just got to wait a year. He'll still be a really good young running back, one of the best running backs we've seen since 2017, And that's the downside. And if so, that sucks. But I'd rather just wait, and then you'll be able to trade him for whatever you could trade him for right now. You'll be able to trade him for then as well. So I don't think there's a risk in waiting too much. Now, as for Jacobs, I didn't know he was in a holdout discussion. To be honest with you, I know there's been some talk around Barkley. Fairly, I mean, the kid's only got so many years, in my opinion, so many years to play, and he's got to make all his money on it. I get it. But anyway, I think Jacobs is just a solid value right now. Again, underrated how young he is, underrated how consistently he's actually been a really productive running back, to be honest with you. And I say you play it out. Stare into the void and tell it to go F itself, you don't scare you. It don't scare you none. The only context I'll put on that, because it is your team, Shane, is you got to be comfortable with it. And in your league, again, the in your league fallacy, you might be able to get a really good trade on Barkley. Like, if you can trade into, who would I trade? There's almost no one I'd trade Barkley into, because all the players are higher value than him, probably. Breece Hall, maybe. If you get a plus on Breece Hall, sure. And Bijan Robinson's higher valued. CMC is probably the exact same value. If you trade for CMC straight up, there you go. You've got rid of your question. You've got the only other player in the league that has that upside, proven upside, sure. But I don't think CMC owner's interested in that. There's not a lot of value difference between them to find a successful trade. If you can find someone that's interested in trading, you could trade into Amon-Ra St. Brown because he's come up a lot today. Or if you could trade into AJ Brown as a discounted old guy in that tier, or Chris Olave, because in your league, he's not valued in the top 10. There are solid trade options, but looking at ADP in the recent trades, I don't think I can say it's likely you get any of them, but you can definitely explore them. Any trade like that would be great, holdout threat or not. But I want him valued where he should be. I wouldn't sell him low. And I feel okay about babbling about this one a little bit longer than usual, Shane, since, you did pay YouTube $5 here. And let me know if that answers the question. If not, I'll come back to it, or hit me up on Twitter. Don't sell low, but get a package when you can. I think there is viable reasons to sell low. Like we were talking about with Adams and Tyreek Hill earlier, to get out in the majority of team situations with a first when you're probably not going to be do that, even if they perform. There are situations to sell low, so I don't think it's a bad question at all. But Barkley's just such a unique, especially in this era of running back assets like CMC. Again, he's the only other one that I don't think there's ever a sell. He's a go over the cliff with player like at wide receiver, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Demaryius Thomas. Frankly, like I knew eventually it wouldn't pay off, but I just kept keeping them and going back to like a certain point. I'm just going over the cliff. Adams, Hill on that list for me, but they're pretty close, so I can understand a competitive team would just, I'm just going to roster them till they're done. It's fine. And with running back, the list is a lot quicker and easier. CMC and Barkley, either I get a great trade that I should probably not expect to be able to get, or I'm Thelma and Louising it, man. I'm going over that cliff with Barkley. I'm feeling pretty good. Like Barkley as a co-pilot feels pretty awesome. Especially if it works out, because that upside is just worth it, you know? Am I making sense at this point? I hope. Shane, my league is stingy as heck. That's good to know. And I same. I felt that. Guy literally said, "I'll give you Chubb for," but yeah. This is, you're just holding this guy, and when they're starting and just beating that guy to death with Saquon Barkley and Justin Jacobs points, you say nothing. Don't, and literally never come back to this moment in time, because you know, living your best life is the best revenge. But yeah, I love Chubb. Chubb is in that category, slightly below Barkley, but easily in that category. It's Jacobs for Chubb, I guess, but Chubb is older, so it's just the same value. Yeah, no, you're just keeping them in that league by the sound of it. But again, if that league is stingy as heck, you might know again that Olave in the top 10 seems crazy to them, which I get the reaction. I really do. That could be something you can try to take advantage of. But if you don't value him there, that's not the move for you. Maybe it's Garrett Wilson. I know a lot of tape guys, if you're more tape oriented, that really feel that way about Wilson. And I would say same bet. They both did as good in their rookie year. Like I like them both at the same value. But if, again, you can find your own guys. I don't need to name your ranks for you. But you get what I mean. You could switch positions and try to trade that for you is easily a win, even if there wasn't a holdout threat. But that's the way I would trade them. I wouldn't trade low, not for those players, not for this situation. I mean, I'm not out on Pollard again. The trade that you saw is fine. He's running back with, I mean, he did so well last year. There's no way of understating how well he played last year. All credit to the player. But I mean, again, there's relatively few Barclays and CMCs where I'm just like Thelma and Louising it. So at value at running back, unless I need their points this week, mostly speculating and trading them. Pete, in 1QB, you okay moving DK for Gibbs? 1QB, I don't. Yeah, the age difference is, I think that's almost spot on the nose of like the like the straight up valuation of like what is it? A running back needs to be like 2.5 years younger than a wide receiver for the same level of expectation to be the same value. And that's a cross-positional trade, so I'm assuming you're improving your running backs and you've got other good wide receivers. I think that's solid. And that's a good point about the picks. I said the top 3. Potentially move it to the top 4 if you think Addison goes above Gibbs. But I was assuming that Gibbs comes in 3rd at least. You know, Robinson, JSN, Gibbs. But again, that comes down to trying to predict your individual draft. But you're right, DK for Gibbs would be a fair trade. Campbell, a best ball redraft guy. Yeah, I mean, again, it's okay to trade for Sky Moore. There's upside there. I get it. Or Tony. But I'm talking about, on the whole, me trying to provide advice on what we call strategy, right? About how to play Dynasty in a vacuum without breaking down all your league personally. Talking in absolutes when absolutes don't exist in the real world, just assuming you're going to good faith read it and know that the real answer is if you can trade for Justin Jefferson, trade for Justin Jefferson. Then I think the closest I can come to on that score of advice is no, not for me, Paris Campbell. But in the last round, you read, I mean, yeah, there's probably no one else. If there's no one else in the round with that level of upside, I would say, having broken down that before by redraft ranks, the deeper you go, the league winners are guys who score more points over expected more often. The better bets, if you want to make an argument, and I probably would. Tight end, running back, we all know to grab those discount running backs, but tight end are actually more consistently producing those points over expected based on where they're drafted in that range. So I'd even lean, I don't know which tight ends are going in the Paris Campbell range, but yeah, sorry. Went on that a little bit too long. Different league, 12 team, 1 QB. I'm trying to send away Pickens, solid move, and Pickett, solid move. Around what value would you aim in return? I mean, there's a million different trades I'd say yes or no to. Again, when we bring into the context of the trade, generically, because that's the way I'm going to answer these things. Pickett didn't have a bad rookie season. He's got positive value over baseline, but not nearly as positive as Wilson and Olave. But it does put him in a more positive range of outcomes. I think it puts him slightly below Watson. But, I mean, that's still solid. I mean, he could still end up being one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in the class. It just, the range of outcomes hasn't been shored up as much as it has for Olave and Wilson, as I said earlier. I don't know why I have to repeat everything. I'm assuming you're all coming and going and only listen to the sections you care about, so I'm repeating stuff, okay? And I want more than a first for Pickens because he had a good, quote-unquote, rookie season. I really think he did. I don't think he's as positive as Olave or Wilson, but I'm definitely not disappointed with the way it goes. So a random first isn't going to do it for me because I just paid off on a random first. I'm trying to improve in that. Pickett, same thing. He's going to be starting quarterback this year. And while those guys are more replaceable than someone like John Hogue likes to pretend, I think, he's also got a very good point about that has value, it has utility in a league, and so it should carry value. In general, what am I looking for? The way I would think about it, and you're right to look at your roster and decide who you want to trade away, by the way, and that's a really good way of looking for trades, I think, is you're packaging these things together. Look at your roster. What do you need to improve? I mean, value, yes, but where on your roster can you best look for that? So if your wide receivers stink, you're trying to use Pickett to tear up Pickens because you just kind of generically you start with wide receiver. So Pickett and Pickens, how far up the wide receiver ranks can I move? Who needs a quarterback that has an Amon-Ra or a Waddle or a CeeDee Lamb or someone that you like who's really far, who's up a significant tier? That's one way I would look at it. The other way you could look at it is try to get an advantage of one of those positions, as we talked about before. It's a 1 QB league, but how about you add Pickett to Pickens and you go get one of those? I mean, in your league, is Josh Allen? Probably not. Patrick Mahomes? Probably not. Jalen Hurts? Maybe. Lamar Jackson? Maybe. Herbert? Maybe. And it's not the trade of your dreams, don't get me wrong, because you want wide receivers and running back in a 1 QB. Don't get me wrong. But there's actually an edge to those guys, even in 1 QB. And if I can just add a Pickens to a Pickett and move from a Pickett all the way up to one of those guys, I think that's viable. If that's the best trade you can find, I'd be interested in that. And you can do a similar thing at tight end, right? What is your tight end situation? If you got Kelsey, just turn off the video or whatever you do because you're good. But if you don't, then maybe you can go try and get Andrews or Kittle or who in your league might value Pickett and Pickens more than a great tight end. Not because it's the trade of your dreams, it's not the best trade I can imagine, but if it definitely improves your roster position and you're tearing up that position, that's a way you can try and approach it. But yeah, there are a lot of different trades you can explore. You can also just try and go get first, right? Can I get a 25 and a 26 first? They're way too far out, but they're definitely value, right? And I just want out of these players. That's one way you can approach it. But looking at your roster, looking at what you could package them together, go get elite quarterback, maybe elite tight end, maybe a tier up wide receiver. Cool. Then go look at those rosters that maybe have those available. Who'll be interested in Pickett this season, right? Or if you know your league really well, which Leo Segura and Zach always advocate for, you know exactly who likes Pickens the most, right? Because he's exciting and he's got one-hand catches, and you know the guy in your league that loves that. So you might just go try and use Pickens as a bait, as it were. But anyway, that doesn't give you an exact trade, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how I'd start to go looking for the trades I would want to do. Something that improves my roster and also hopefully gives someone else something they like so they want to do more trades with me. Thanks for the solid input, Peter. Much appreciated. No problem, Shane. Thanks. 25 and 26-year-old running back probably hold. Lakers ex-commanders, welcome back. Just wanted to say sup. Have a good night. Appreciate you, man. Like the video on your way past. Why not? I guess. I don't know if it matters, but do it. You'll just get low balls right now. Again, like trading low. And again, it was a fair question. Like there are potential to trade low. Anyway, but the potential windows where trading low is the best thing you can do. But we try to avoid them if we can. And for those players, no. Should I trade Lamar and Khalil Herbert for the 104 and 109? I'm assuming a Superflex rookie picks. No. I don't think there's a quarterback in this draft I prefer more than Lamar, and Herbert's solid. Lamar's worth both of those picks is a problem. Like, I don't mind getting Khalil Herbert. I kind of like that. People are a little low on him. Rashawn Johnson's cool and pretty good, so maybe they should be, but I like rostering those questionable running backs. Those running back questions, since my running backs tend to be sucky. So that's how I try and find them. But Lamar is easily worth the 104 and the 109 to me. Again, you might have a different opinion on Lamar, but like I think it's a really rare dynasty asset, really rare quarterbacks in terms of scoring range rankings. I know John Hogue is particularly lower on him, but I'm not this low. This is in a Superflex rookie draft. You're hoping for Stroud and Quentin Johnson for Lamar. I wouldn't do that. That's all up again. Yeah, it's rough. Sometimes you just got to, again, stare into the void of your league and say, no. I normally end up doing that. It's no Superflex, by the way. For which one was that? It's non-Superflex. Okay. So going back on my assumptions, the 104 is Gibbs or Addison. The 109 is Quentin Johnson. Did I say? I don't know. It's probably like Kincaid or the running back 3-4. I forget my rookie ranks right now. I forget the rookie ranks in ADP right now, but that's probably what you're looking at, the 4 and the 9. Yeah, in a 1 QB, Lamar has that top 5. He's one of those few guys who can provide that edge even on 1 QB. That's why I'm hesitating. But that's probably Addison or Gibbs at the 104. Yes. Yeah, I think I'd do that. That's fine. But sucks. But yeah. In a 1 QB, I get just taking Gibbs or Addison straight up, and getting the 109 is just kind of a bonus. You try to build primarily in a 1 QB through wide receivers, and running backs are a little more predictive, so you can definitely trade Gibbs a little easier to more teams. So I get it. So you guys keep Lamar. In a 1 QB, I'd be happy to trade him, but I definitely get the argument. Like, again, he's one of those few quarterbacks who like actually provides an edge in a 1 QB. I get it. I've been misnaming people all night. I apologize. Gibbs over JSN. I actually have a whole video on this where there's an intentional mistake in my rookie rankings. I will not take Gibbs over JSN or Addison. It's probably a process fault, and I don't care. At some point you have to be able to say, I'm putting my money in on this chip, and I think I know enough about JSN and Addison to know they're good, and therefore value them as good wide receivers relative to other rookies. I'm not doing it compared to DK. But yeah, I'll take that gamble. But I will say that Gibbs for Amon-Ra trade, I took Gibbs in the draft instead of the wide receivers because I know the league, and I knew they weren't going to allow me to have my little mistake. If I take Addison, I just was not going to get that value. Whereas if I took Gibbs, I knew I could go get that value because that's probably the way it should be ranked. Gedge, I actually think you're pretty sharp. Yeah, obviously, but that's fair point. Gibbs probably not for me, but it's definitely fair. Yeah. Again, I just expect Swift. That's the only way I can defend it. Like, I think he's going to be good, real good. Gibbs is going to be real good. But I just wonder when he's not Barkley or CMC or Alvin Kamara is the other comparison I've seen, then everyone will be like, oh, he sucks. In the same way they did about Swift, who's actually pretty good at what he did too. And then there'll be a lull. They'll be like, there's a potential Gibbs window. Not that I'll be able to buy it at that point, because buying running backs is a points proposition. But anyway, that's why. That's the only way I can defend it. And yes, in one dynasty league, my running backs are Chubb, Stevenson, JT, Najee, ETN, and so that's a really good running back room. You have Jamar Chase as well. Why not? Why not have Jamar Chase as well? And in the league, I got JJ, Diggs, Waddle, DK, IU, plus more. First team, I laughed all the way to the bank on that team. Second one, JJ, Diggs, Waddle. Yeah, okay, that's solid. Ayuk. Well, you got him in the right order, so I'm not going to say anything. That's fine. I like Ayuk. I like Ayuk in that kind of order. There are Superflex Dynasty, both crazy teams. One has godly running backs, one has nasty wide receivers. Yeah, you can build in both different directions. Good point, NS. Yeah, really good point. I got Bajon, real happy. Yeah. That's real sharp take. Not many people. No, that's good. You're sleeping on Gibbs. If having Gibbs below Bijan Robinson is sleeping on him, then yeah, I absolutely am. I absolutely expect a lot more from Bijan Robinson than anyone else from this class, to be honest with you, especially year one, especially in terms of value and dynasty. Literally, we have CMC and Barkley. I think Bijan Robinson can be that guy, but like early career. There's almost nothing hotter than that in Dynasty. We don't have any. Like, we hope Breece Hall, but he had an injury and hadn't shown quite that upside, although I do think it's in the range, but now we have to worry about the injury. Like, Bijan Robinson can walk into that straight away. And like, there'll be no one else. There'll be no one else that early in their career or that young who's that guy at running back. There'll be maybe Bijan, Saquon Barkley, and Christian McCaffrey, that guy, but older. That's it. It'll be Breece and Bijan Robinson. And we all love running backs. The secret is, like, wide receivers and nerds like wide receivers, sure, but we're looking for running backs, man. Because of that positional advantage, because of the reasons everyone likes to, when they do, value running backs and try to build like that team was. Like, that's what should happen with Bijan Robinson. Though obviously, since I don't know nothing, I could definitely be wrong. JSM I get, but Gibbs, one thing for sure about Swift, he couldn't stay. Gibbs did have an injury problem, that's it. See, that's actually that's the only way I can get high on Addison in rookie ADP. Straight up, like, again, I made that video to try and cover myself. In your drafts, you should have Gibbs over Addison. I get it. I definitely think it's a mistake in my rookie ranks. But I'm bound and determined to be higher on Addison than you. Well, not you, but like whoever could possibly watch this, I will be higher on Addison than you. And it might not work out because I don't know the actual future. And I'm not, JJ Zacharyson or some guy who is exceptionally good at this. But you got to make your own decisions, and looking over everything I can do and the experience, I think Addison is him, as the kids say. And so I'm bound and determined to be higher on him. And the only way to do it, since he's ranked in the top 4 by ADP, is to bump up over Gibbs, give him the positional bump as if he's already good. But you're right. Yeah, you should definitely not have it ranked that way, and not the way you should draft either. Because again, if you draft Gibbs, you can immediately trade him away for a wide receiver who's already as good as I hope, maybe about Addison is going to be. So yeah, you should probably definitely be Gibbs. Trying to keep it honest with you guys. It's not the way I'm going to draft it, but it is the way I'm going to try and play it. That's what my ranks are about. Gibbs also had no red zone work, and the little he had wasn't efficient. I could pull up stat, and not that you don't know that, but I'm just saying I have not looked at that recently, so I can't say true or false, but it sounds realistic. Doesn't look like they're setting up to have a different kind of split, is the other way to say. Like Dave Montgomery, Jamal Williams, Swift, Gibbs. Again, that seems a little too simplistic, but I mean, I don't think they're trying to rewrite the playbook with the pick, if you know what I mean. So those are my expectations right now. I'd love it if they're higher because, again, I am really rooting for Gibbs. And seeing more good young running backs would be really great for Dynasty right now. Anyway, so yeah, I can only tell you the truth, I love Addison. I get the take, but Gibbs is pretty good. Yeah. We're on the same page. We're just determined to make, and you should be, like, I'm actively telling you should go with your own opinion here, but I'm at the same time tell you what I'm going to do instead. I'm riding my hot take, if you will. Not that it's a hot take because you love Addison as well, but I have to have him top 5. This is not Melvin Gordon. He's got a bright future. Melvin Gordon was awesome, to be fair. Like Melvin Gordon would be an incredible rookie season if he does what Melvin Gordon does. But let's not quibble over good. Jameer Gibbs is good. He's going to do very good, and we're all going to be very happy. I think, and again, you already said it, I win that hot take, as it were, because if Addison is good, he's got the positional advantage immediately. Now, don't get me wrong, value-wise, Gibbs get the positional advantage because there's so few good young running backs. But Gibbs has to beat my expectation, and Addison just has to meet it. And Addison was the better pick. Again, that's where my head's at. What I'm actively telling you, probability-wise, Gibbs just has to be good. I think Gibbs just has to be swift. I think if he meets a reasonable expectation, Gibbs is a better pick. But I'm not going to be lower on Addison than you. I'm sorry. Again, I made this whole... It was only 7 minutes long. I'm trying to keep my videos really short lately because I do know I have a tendency to run up. Say things short, simply, and once, Pete. Saying exactly this. You should draft Gibbs over Addison for sure. But I am going to have value Addison over Gibbs, which often means taking Gibbs and trading or trading back if I can. And if I can't, I'll draft Gibbs and I'll trade him away for Addison plus or into Almon-Ra is actually what that trade turned out to be. Not because I don't like Gibbs, but because I really want to be on Addison. And it's difficult to do that when everyone knows Addison should be good. Like me and Zach are both saying everyone's too low on Addison, but he's really high ranked. And so you have to get a little hot takey to actually show and actually act that way. Like we're saying we're high on Gibbs, we're high on Addison. The only way for me to say, look, I practice what I preach is to do something that's actually a little suboptimal. And that's take him over Gibbs. And the only way to do it long term or in Dynasty ranks proper is to have him over players you should probably draft over Addison. But I want to practice what I preach. This is how I'm going to play in my leagues. And just keeping it honest, that's the way I'm going to play in my leagues. I'm not going to say I'm going to end up with Addison because, again, a lot of players like Addison, and trades are difficult as we keep coming across. Like you've got lots of trades you would take, but you just can't find the one that you and your league partner and your team situations it's going to work out. So I'm not going to have Addison in every league, but if I'm going to be being honest with you by saying I like Addison a lot, I think he's going to hit blah, 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 blah. To be high, to practice that preach, and it's not just so I'm being honest with you guys, it's so I'm playing how I think my process is telling me to play, then I got to make what on the face of it is some suboptimal bets and then tell you, hey guys, I'm doing this, but you probably should just get Gibbs. He's going to be really good. He's really good. We don't get running back ranks wrong very often. In rookie draft ADP, DLF is pretty solid in that. Is Swift, if Swift was healthy, would have finished? Yeah, he constantly had that top 12 upside, and we hope that's what Gibbs is going to bring. The hit rate of top 12 drafted backs is insanely high. Yep. In the NFL, but also like the running back 2 in DLF ADP ranks is usually the running back 2. Like even, again, you guys all know, DLF all knows. I know I'm telling you. I'm straight up telling you I'm going to be suboptimal because I think Addison's going to be really good. And if he is, then you positional value in Dynasty, I know eventually that'll creep in, right? Suboptimal because it's less likely because of everything you're mentioning and everything I told you that you should value. It's a YOLO take, and it's not. It's not that hard. I'm moving them relatively little, but it takes relatively little to make it insane because Gibbs is so good. Yeah, I get it. Again, yeah, I know you do, and I'm not saying you don't. I'm just constantly trying to. I'm trying to make content that people like, so they'll sub because I'm trying to be subscription based, right? I don't want to hot products. It's a stupid way of doing it in this space because it's not like we have many products that are unethical. It's like subscriptions to stuff, and it's all fine. But I want to know that if I can make it in this space, it's because I'm genuinely, doing stuff that actual people playing fantasy appreciate. So I want to be Patreon funded. It's stupid, but I'm doing it. And to do that, I'm trying to give you the best information I can with all the research that I try to do that you might be able to find advantage in. And not even I can, but I can tell you certain things that are true or not. But I also am trying to develop a process because the root cause of it, I just want to be better at Dynasty. And one of the things, based on many of the things we've talked about, is I really like Addison. My rookie evaluations have come to a point that just scream Jordan Addison. And I want to be in on it. So yeah, I'm trying to do both at the same time. I know you understand the take, I know you appreciate it, and honestly, you can get both. You don't have to be an idiot, but I'm almost I'm sticking myself in this situation intentionally. I'm trying to see if I can win this suboptimal bet. I guess it's the way I keep framing it. I don't know why. Yeah, it's a little stupid, but that's okay. It's kind of fun. Maybe it's just for the fun of it, We all want to get our wide receivers right, And here's the thing: Addison can be good, Gibbs can be good, and it was still better to draft Gibbs over Addison. That's why it's part of the reason it's quote unquote suboptimal. I have higher expectations of Addison than even that. And I'm definitely wrong. I'm the Corey Davis guy. Don't forget, I drafted N'Keal Harry a lot. Don't take me. This is me trying to authority you. I've done this, and so I know that Addison's great. I'm literally just trying to be straight up honest, but while trying to make content that you could find useful without having to do exactly what I think I will do with Addison, and at the same time improve my own dynasty process. Try and take the bets that I want to take. It's a balance of trying to do both. But I really appreciate you talking with me about it on at 1:30 in the morning on a random Thursday. That's that is payback in and of itself. I keep it, man. Appreciate it. Anyway, I better go because still haven't seen my family today, so I should probably go do that before they divorce me. I really appreciate all of you. We'll be back next week at the regular scheduled time, unless I have more problems. But no, this is the only week where I have not started at 9:30. If you want to check us out, every week 9:30, there'll be at least me, probably Zach, maybe even Dynasty Outhouse again at some point in the future if he ever gets over his hatred of me. Obviously, no, joke. Really appreciate you all. See you next week at 9:30 p.m. EST. Seriously, genuinely appreciate all of you for chatting it up about Dynasty every week for no real reason. You're saints, you really are. Thanks.